Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. In an instant, 8 pink sashes as sharp as blades were released from her body, immediately sealing off the space around Meko. Comparing attack numbers? Meko snorted coldly. Without a word, she released dozens of black strings from the skin all over her body, turning herself into a human sea urchin. Some of these strings were sticky, any sash that touched them would be tightly entangled. Others were as hard as iron and as sharp as needles, easily piercing the thick octopus tentacles. Boom, she first spat a fear energy bullet at the large octopus, then ran across the hardened black lines, her entire body trailing a faint blue afterimage as she charged towards Daki at high speed. Because Meko had noticed that this female demon's aura was the weakest. You! Don't come over here! The naturally naive and cruel Daki became nervous when she saw Meko's blue glowing eyes and ferocious faceplate. She quickly released more pink sashes to try and block her. But these sashes were either cut apart by the black blade on Meko's right arm or easily dodged by her. In the end, while Daki was in a panic, a single slash cut off her beautiful head. Ah, it was cut off again. Daki's head, flying in midair, was still screaming loudly, full of frustration. But just as Meko turned to hack her body into pieces, from the severed neck, a male demon emerged, gaunt in appearance, ugly-faced, covered in black spots, hunchbacked, and bare-chested. Holding 2 crimson scythes that looked like they were made of blood and flesh, he blocked the incoming thick black blade at extreme speed and immediately engaged in close-quarters combat with Meko. The clanging of metal echoed as countless afterimage intertwined between the 2 sides. The swirling astral wind and energy were like a giant black and red tornado, preventing anyone or anything from approaching. Whether it was Daki's sashes, which had regenerated her body and shot over, or the large octopus's tentacles, or Akaza's shockwave bombarding from a distance, they were all blocked by the outer edge of the tornado. What strong battle aura, is that the true form of Upper Moon 6? I knew that Daki's battle aura was a bit too weak, it didn't reach the upper rank level at all. Akaza narrowed his eyes, observing Jotaro in combat. These upper ranks seemed to have close relationships, but due to Mizunkibutsuji's order, they had very little contact over the years. He also had no interest in fighting Daki, who was much weaker than him, so this was the first time he had seen Jotaro. However, as the fight went on, Jotaro, who had always been proud of his attack speed, clearly couldn't keep up with Meko, who possessed observation haki. The scar left by the black blade on his body increased, while his blood sickle basically couldn't touch Meko. Even if it occasionally landed a hit on Meko's body, it would be defended against by the layer of black armor she wore. Blood Demon Art, Leaping Arc. The heavily injured Jotaro unleashed his Blood Demon Art. The blood on his body seemed to be imbued with spirit, turning into thin blood blade that rapidly rotated around his entire body, forcefully pushing Meko back. As she flew backward, the dense blood blade also made sharp whistling sound, following closely with a strong foul smell. This Jotaro's Blood Demon Art could actually control his demon blood. Meanwhile, to Meko's left was Upper Moon 3 Akaza charging forward, to her right was the large octopus summoned by Gyako, and behind her were Daki's sashas. Only Upper Moon 4 Handu remained inactive. There was nothing he could do. He could only summon his 4 high combat power emotional manifestations, anger, joy, delight, and sorrow, when pushed into a corner or even decapitated. Before that, he was just a timid and insecure fear. Mizunkibutsuji, who was observing the combat, was aware of this and didn't think much of it. Moreover, she could see that Meko's strength wasn't very high, and she could be taken down within a short time under the siege of 3 upper rank. As for those lower rank who were like useless, she had long wanted to prune them. For so many years, it had always been these lower rank getting defeated, with several rotations already. Given this, from now on, only demon with upper rank strength would be allowed to join the 12 Kizuki. What kind of strength qualified as upper rank? It was the strength to defeat a Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps alone. Mizunkibutsuji's gaze was mainly focused on the combat between Captain Gus and Kokushibo and Doma, because the former was actually suppressing the latter too. The physique of a pirate world person, the new form Kabaneri, Marine 6 styles body techniques, coupled with armament hockey and observation hockey, made Captain Gus a complete hexagonal warrior. In this short period, Doma's head had been smashed 3 times by his fists. If it weren't for Kokushibo interfering, this upper rank 2 would have already turned into a black jar again. It's worth mentioning that because Kokushibo was a swordsman who used breathing style in his life, his self-created moon breathing also had the perception ability to predict the target's movements. This greatly offset Captain Gus's observation hockey. Despite this, given Captain Gus another 10-odd minutes, this upper rank 1 would also be cut open by him and put into a black jar. At this moment, Kokushibo felt as if he had encountered the third opponent in his life who was so much stronger than himself. No matter how he used various swordsmanship techniques and unleashed dense crescent blade wind, he simply couldn't do anything against this so-called Kabaneri. Swish, just then, an incredibly fast black shadow shot towards the back of Captain Gus's head. Its speed was extremely fast even in the perception world of observation hockey. In this critical moment, Captain Gus didn't have time to use any martial arts. He could only quickly turn his body sideways, while simultaneously meeting the attack with his right fist covered in a layer of black armor. Rumble-doing, only then did the deafening sonic boom sound in their ears, followed by the impact sound of the black fist colliding with the bone whip. What a hard fist! Completely disregarding her unsportsmanlike sneak attack from behind, Ms. Nkibutsuji retracted a whip formed from her right hand, while looking at Captain Gus in surprise. "Hey, so you've finally made your move, demon progenitor?" Gus sneered, simultaneously flexing his right fist, which he had further hardened with armament hockey. He had to admit, Mizen's whip attack was very strong. If he hadn't used armament hockey just now, the black armor on his hand alone wouldn't have been able to block it. If it had been Meko, she would probably be dead by now. "I heard you've lived for 1,000 years, but why are you so weak that you're about the same as me?" Captain Gus said, completely ignoring the fact that his words also insulted himself. Because he knew very well that in the Sea Star world, there were simply too many people stronger than him. What an ignorant and arrogant existence. Does being a little stronger than these upper rank make you so proud? As Ms. Nkibutsuji spoke, her body began to change from female to male. The black kimono on her body instantly shattered, revealing a muscular body and arms covered in red patterns. "You two go deal with that woman. Don't kill her, and absolutely don't eat a piece of her meat or a drop of her blood." "Yes, Lord Muz." Kokushibo and Doma quickly agreed upon hearing the order, only able to glare hatefully at Captain Gus. In the court, only Ms. Nkibutsuji and Captain Gus remained, facing each other from a distance. One was filled with killing intent, the other had a cold expression. At the same time, the latter threw off his kimono, revealing the heart on his chest glowing with dazzling blue light and a spreading blue blood vessel. Seeing this, Ms. narrowed her eyes. Swish. Swish. The next second, both instantly disappeared from their original position, then fiercely collided in the court. The whips formed from their arms and a hockey-hardened black fist, carrying surging air current and sonic boom, turned into countless after-image invisible to the naked eye. Bang 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 bang, the collision sounds, many times more intense than the previous exchange between Meko and Jutaro, were continuous. The strength of the sonic boom destructively shattered the platform under their feet. This expanded the scale of their combat to the entire Infinity Castle. After the brief few seconds of hundreds of exchanges just now, Ms. Nkibutsuji had completely realized that Captain Gus's strength could not be taken down without going all out. This caused her to release all 9 whips on her back and the 8 whips on her legs, in addition to the whips formed from her arms. With 19 terrifying whips that could cause cell collapse with just a single touch to a human body, she lashed out at Captain Gus, who was rapidly flipping through the air using moonwalk. The sonic boom air current wrapped around each whip were like a supersonic fighter jet rampaging through the Infinity Castle. The various buildings within the Infinity Castle suffered unprecedented massive destruction. It even affected the 12 Kizuki nearby, who had just caught Meko, forcing them to frantically retreat and stay as far away as possible from the battlefield of the 2 big shot. Is this Lord Mizen's true strength? So strong. Both the lower rank and the upper rank watched Ms. Nkibutsuji and Captain Gus constantly intertwining and colliding, completely dumbfounded. Among them, only Kokushibo and Akaza could sense the trajectory of their movements. In the eyes of the others, there was basically nothing to see except the air ripples splashing like water spray. Outside the Infinity Castle, however, the Japanese government was in a panic. Because the extra strong sandstorm that appeared from the direction of Mount Fuji not only showed no signs of slowing down in momentum or scale, but was also sweeping towards the Tokyo area in a mighty torrent. Chapter 320, The Rampaging Crocodile. Clatter clatter clatter, the rapid typing of keyboards was the main melody in this hall, and the sounds of communication between communicators and investigators, making the already lively atmosphere even more noisy. Personnel with serious expressions carefully recorded the important information on the screen wall, then took it back to their respective departments for discussion and evaluation. It must be said that the existence of the Demon Slayer world was causing the world government's experience in other world conquests to rise sharply. Although there was a bit of chaos now, everyone was quickly adapting to this work pace during the continuous adjustment process. Chairman. Based on preliminary calculations, getting 200,000 army through the Stargate will theoretically take at least 34 days. An official in a suit stood in the meeting room and gave his report. How did you calculate that? Chairman Fernandez asked in a calm, deep voice. The official quickly presented the various data he had calculated. It is known that to pass through Homeland's RL-1557 biochemical safety station and the other world's biochemical safety station on the other side of the Stargate, a total of 4 disinfection rooms must be passed through, with each disinfection room taking 1 minute for disinfection. Adding the sequential opening and closing time for all electric gates, it takes about 1 minute in total, so these 5 minutes are fixed. The key is the Stargate. Because the Stargate's width is only 2 meters, a maximum of 3 soldiers can enter simultaneously at one time. The average time for each group of soldiers to pass through the Stargate is 5 seconds, meaning 36 people can enter the other world in 6 minutes, 360 people in 1 hour, and 8,640 people in 24 hours. However, theoretical data is just that. Theoretical data after all. It is estimated that the actual required time is around 40 days. If we also include the input of ammunition supplies, it will take at least 2 months. After his explanation, Lieutenant General Kong-Ming and the others present understood that there were only a little over 2 months left until a full-scale war with the other world. This time seemed quite long, but when considering that this was preparation for a war between 2 worlds, one could realize it was actually very short. Understood. You may go back now. Yes. After the official left, Chairman Fernandez looked at Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel, who was in charge of administration management, and asked, before these 200,000 army successfully pass through, can we ensure they aren't discovered by the Japanese government? Before, there was definitely no problem. That Okigahara forest was enough to accommodate and hide them. But now, because of that bastard crocodile's reckless actions, the Japanese government's attention has surely been drawn to the Mount Fuji area. After all, the super sandstorm they're talking about came from here. As a result, the risk of being discovered has also increased. Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel said with a displeased expression. In other words, the Japanese government's people might explore the Okigahara forest recently to find the source of the sandstorm. That is indeed quite troublesome. Vice Chairman Marilyn Wilfred, who was in charge of finance, frowned slightly with worry. Once the Japanese government discovered a large number of armed forces hidden in the forest, their reaction was predictable. Vice Chairman Kong-Ming, the former Vice Admiral of Marine Headquarters and current Vice Minister of the Staff Department, chuckled lightly while holding his feather fan. It's actually not that serious. Even if they send investigators, they will only be checking the climate. The possibility of them going deep into the forest is very low. Moreover, according to intelligence, Japan only has desert in Tottori Prefecture, so the focus of their exploration should be there. In the end, the Stargate is still too small. It would be great if it could be wider and taller. Chairman Fernandez sighed. Regarding this, the vice chairman present remained silent, because no one knew how this Stargate came to be. To avoid taboo, they never investigated the inside story, only utilizing it based on what was available. Never mind, 2 months it is. After 2 months, we'll take over Japan first, then declare war on the whole world. At the same time, in the Demon Slayer world, within the Japanese Cabinet Office, the Minister of State, led by Prime Minister Kato, gathered together. Recently, the destruction and casualties caused by the sudden sandstorm gave them terrible headaches. Fortunately, due to frequent earthquake and tsunami over the years, they had some experience in disaster relief. The super sandstorm has already reached Fujino City in Kanagawa Prefecture and is about to enter Hikoji City. It won't be long before Tokyo is also covered by yellow sand. What is the Japan Meteorological Agency's opinion? Prime Minister Kato's stern gaze was directed at Minister Ishizaki of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, as the Japan Meteorological Agency was under their responsibility. Before coming here, I already heard Director Natrani's latest report. Their statement is that it's impossible for a sandstorm to come from the Mount Fuji direction, and given our country's climate environment, even if there were sandy climate, a super rank sandstorm like this couldn't possibly occur. Minister Ishizaki could only say this with a forced smile out of helplessness. When he heard these words before, he also cursed out that director of the Japan Meteorological Agency, saying things like "this is impossible, that is impossible." The sandstorm was right before their eyes. What was impossible about it? So? As expected, anger appeared on Prime Minister Kato's face, and the minister from various provinces around him also stared at him with unfriendly expressions. Therefore, their opinion is to quickly prepare for sand and wind protection, and then issue a warning to the entire Tokyo area as soon as possible, reminding the citizens to bring things from outside back into their houses. Minister Ishizaki felt greatly wronged in his heart. Leaving aside how this super sandstorm came about, but since it had already arrived, what else could be done besides this? This was a natural disaster. The office was silent. Everyone knew that this was all they could do. Send people to investigate along the sandstorm's path to see where the source is. For the rest, proceed according to the Japan Meteorological Agency's opinion. This old man will go report to Lord Emperor. Prime Minister Kato felt it was necessary to figure out the origin of this sandstorm, otherwise, what would they do if it happened again in the future? It's just that how could these high officials know the specific situation among the populace? Due to the level of technology in this era, there was simply no equipment capable of live broadcast of the scene, so they couldn't see how miserable the places the sandstorm passed through were. Smaller villages were basically buried by yellow sand. In larger towns, except for the large building that were still standing, the remaining houses were scattered by the sandstorm. As for the people or animals inside, God knows where they were blown away to, but given the physique of the people in this world, the chance of survival is too low. Of course, this had a lot to do with everything being wooden house and wooden building. In large city like Otsuki City and Uenohara City, the resulting casualties were even greater, as these places had very dense population. Moreover, there were more houses and all sorts of messy things, especially those small cars. The destruction caused when these were swept up by the strong wind was no less than that of bullet or cannonball. At this time, although the sandstorm had passed, the entire city was completely dilapidated. The streets were filled with corpses that were fortunately not blown away. As for how many Japanese people died and how much economic loss in value was caused by Crocodile's journey this time, that was unclear. He only knew that he seemed to be getting close to his destination. Ha 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 ha, hearty and mocking wild laughter, accompanied by the howling sandstorm in another ravaged city below, Fujino City, echoed like the wailing of demons and gods. This caused the survivor hiding underground or in concrete building, trembling with fear, to wonder if they were experiencing auditory hallucinations due to excessive fear. They trembled like mice. Chapter 321, Yellow Sand Pouring into Infinity Castle. Inside the Infinity Castle, Mizen Kibutsuji and Steve Gus had been fiercely fighting for a full 2 days. Despite this, neither side's speed, strength, or attention had been affected in the slightest, and the buildings in their path were reduced to ruins. They were like a pair of meteor, sometimes separating, sometimes chasing, sometimes colliding, then flashing past each other. The combat had reached a fever pitch. Blood demon art, black blood thorns. Mizen, filled with anger, suddenly raised his right arm covered in blood-red patterns towards Gus. In an instant, dozens of black thorns with sharp points transformed into a terrifying large net and covered him. Seeing this, the latter coldly snorted and didn't mention any technique name. As if imitating, he raised his own right arm covered with a layer of black armor. Instantly, a large amount of black strings shot out and quickly hardened into sharp long needles mid-flight, clashing head-on with those black thorns in the air, erupting in countless flickering sparks and crisp clanging sounds. Damn it, so annoying. Seeing this, Mizen grew increasingly impatient. He hadn't expected that this so-called Gobinarai before him would actually be truly difficult to deal with. Especially after fighting for so long, how could this bastard not show any signs of fatigue at all? However, only he knew his own situation best. Captain Guts's actual situation was somewhat not optimistic. In terms of stamina, he could probably last for about half a day to a full day. The key was that his haki was almost depleted. Mizen Kibutsuji's attack speed and attack frequency greatly exceeded his expectations. Those 19 thorny whips constantly maintained continuous attacks at supersonic rank. He seemed to have no concept of fatigue or stamina at all. This caused Captain Guts to constantly have to use observation haki and armament haki, which made his mental strength somewhat unable to keep up. And the biggest problem was, although I don't know how much longer you can last, including that energy bullet, you don't seem to have the means to kill me. It's fated that you will be the one to die in the end, it's just a matter of time. While maintaining high-speed combat, Mizen Kibutsuji sneered to disrupt Captain Guts's mindset. At the same time, he wanted to probe the opponent's specific situation. After all, it was his first time fighting a Gobinarai. Regarding this, Captain Guts didn't reply, facing Mizen's wave after wave of dense offensives with an expressionless face. Anyway, all he could do now was drag it out. If he couldn't drag it out until their own support arrived, it would just be death. As a Cypherpol member who had received professional training since childhood, he had long been mentally prepared to die on a mission. It was just a pity that he wasn't married yet, let alone had children. Well, that's fine too. If he really had children, they would probably also be taken to Kona Island for training, right? That was actually quite painful too. Bang 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 bang, amidst the seemingly endless sounds of fierce combat, time flowed by little by little. Infinity Castle had suffered its first major destruction in hundreds of years. Regarding these things, the remaining 11-12 Kizuki could only quietly wait while guarding the captured Mekko. Anyway, the one who would ultimately win would definitely be Lord Maz. Meanwhile, Hakoji City, located about 40 kilometers west of Tokyo City, had received the highest rank black alert in advance. At this time, not a single person could be seen in the streets and alleys of the city. Only some stray dogs were still frolicking around, enjoying the rare opportunity to become the city's masters. However, officials and scholars from the Tokyo Meteorological Agency very professionally came to a 3-story concrete small building in the westernmost part of the urban area. They were looking into the distance at Mount Takao, which was a lush, beautiful green mountain covered in vegetation. Unfortunately, its height of less than 600 meters meant it couldn't possibly block a sandstorm that was at least 1,000 meters high. These people just wanted to see with their own eyes what such a strange and exceptionally strong sandstorm looked like. For this, they also temporarily modified the doors and windows of this small building. The doors were replaced with heavier iron doors, and the windows were fitted with 5 layers of glass. Inside the building, there was also a lot of fresh water and food stored. It's here. Shukaku. Suddenly, a meteorological professional raised his finger and shouted. It turned out that following the custom of giving code names to typhoons, they also gave crocodile the code name Shukaku. It was truly because in Japanese myth, only Shukaku seemed to be related to the desert. Following his fingertip, sure enough, they saw a vast expanse of yellow sand surging over the sky above Mount Takao. They were like a tsunami, submerging layers of green. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, in the blink of an eye, the western line of Hakoji City was completely covered. That concrete small building had long since disappeared within the sandstorm. Looking down from a higher perspective, one could see the entire city being gradually dyed yellow from west to east at a speed visible to the naked eye. The entire scene was extremely shocking. About 10 minutes later, Hakoji City was completely fallen. But a strange situation occurred. These sandstorms seemed to have no intention of continuing to move forward. Instead, they enveloped the city, which was being brutally ravaged and suffering in agony, swirling into a tornado-like form. For the people here, it was like the doomsday had arrived. Within the sky-obscuring sandstorm, the air was filled with choking sand and dim light. And as the gale roared, everything fell into chaos. Yet, in such an extremely harsh environment, as the dense yellow sand gathered, it actually formed a tall, humanoid figure. Apart from his black coat being blown around noisily, he seemed unaffected by the sandstorm. It seems to be here. Crocodile looked at the 2 Vivire cards in his palm that were no longer moving, only the edge of one of them was gradually burning black. He put away the 2 pieces of paper. First, he unhurried lit himself a cigar. Then, he squinted his eyes and surveyed the streets and various buildings below. Underground, huh? In that case. The next moment, his arm turned into flowing yellow sand again, and then rapidly expanded. Every grain of sand vibrated at high speed. Soon, a buzzing sound rang out beside his ear. Whether you can survive or not depends entirely on luck now. Desert Treasure Blade Crocodile shouted out his technique name with a cigar in his mouth. At the same time, he forcefully swung his right arm towards the city below. Boom, the incomparably sharp sand blade, nearly 3 meters long, became even larger the moment it left his hand. It tore through the sandstorm and gale along its path. The air along its path became dense, became distorted. Finally, unable to withstand such compression, it produced a violent air explosion. The moment it landed on the ground, it instantly cut a terrifying scar hundreds of meters long and over 10 meters deep into Hakoji City's body. As for what happened to the houses or people it covered, who cared? I see it. At this moment, Crocodile's gaze locked onto a point of gunfire flash within the cut. The brightly lit Infinity Castle was simply too dazzling in the pitch-black underground environment. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the next moment, he once again turned into a mass of yellow sand and dispersed within the sandstorm. Inside the Infinity Castle, Mizan Kibatsuji and Captain Guts, who was in a rather sorry state, had already stopped fighting due to the sudden violent tremor. This fortress seemed to have encountered an earthquake. What's going on? The former frowned, looking displeasedly at Natheim, who was holding a pipe and had a clearly panicked expression on her face. However, he didn't notice Gus, who was covered in cold sweat and clutching his bleeding severed arm, his gaze filled with surprise. Lord Mizn, out. Outside there's a sandstorm, and also the place we're in has cracked open. Notheim, perceiving the situation outside the Infinity Castle, stammered out her explanation. But her words didn't make sense to Mizn, Kokushibo, and the others. There's a sandstorm on the surface, what does that have to do with this underground Infinity Castle? Also, what does cracked open mean? Crack, but just then, a strange cracking sound suddenly echoed from above. Everyone simultaneously raised their heads, shocked to see dense cracks appearing on the rooftop of the Infinity Castle. Immediately after, wisps of yellow sand sprinkled down. And as the cracks grew larger and more numerous, more and more yellow sand poured in, as if there was a desert above the Infinity Castle. Chapter 322, Mizn Kibutsuji is afraid. Sand, more and more sand flowed down, like a torrential heavy rain. Illuminated by the surrounding lights, this almost continuous stream of yellow sand faintly shimmered with a golden light, like a golden curtain spreading down from above the Infinity Castle. So it's him. Seeing this scene, Captain Guts immediately understood, but his lost right arm made him feel helpless. He figured from now on, he could only work behind the scenes. But while Gus understood, Mizn Kibutsuji and the others were still surprised. No one knew what was happening or where this yellow sand was coming from. Notheim, send this sand out. Mizn felt a chill run down his spine as he watched the increasing amount of sand. He instinctively felt he couldn't let it go unchecked. Yes. Receiving the order, Notheim quickly strummed the pipe in her hand. Immediately, open sliding doors appeared out of thin air below where the yellow sand was falling. The other end of the doors led to the territories of the 12 demon exterminators in various locations. Some were in a certain town, others in deep mountains and old forests. But another strange scene appeared. As the yellow sand was about to fly out of the sliding doors, it seemed to possess intelligence, automatically turning to avoid them. At the same time, it rapidly spread out, changing from a line to a surface, blocking the front of these sliding doors and completely sealing off the openings. This. Notheim, Mizn, and the other demons were stunned. Suddenly, Kokushibo loudly reminded. This isn't ordinary sand, it's some kind of superpower. As soon as its voice fell, the falling yellow sand began to drift and circulate in midair again. The sound of wind gradually grew louder and more distinct in their ears. In the blink of an eye, the air throughout the entire Infinity Castle was filled with a thick, yellow sandstorm. Ha! 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 Just then, bursts of panting laughter, with the wind, sand, and penetrating light as a backdrop, echoed in every corner. It's your people. Mizn Kibutsuji immediately realized this must be the new monster sent by the world government. This made him charge towards Captain Guts at the first opportunity. He planned to swallow him directly, thus obtaining all the memories in his head. Naturally, he would then know what this thing controlling the yellow sand was. However, such an obvious intention certainly couldn't be hidden from anyone. As soon as Mizn moved, a dense mass of yellow sand gathered in front of Captain Guts, seemingly intending to block him. Humphrey, a pile of broken sand. Mizn Kibutsuji sneered. His right arm instantly transformed into a thorny whip. A fierce sweep was meant to scatter this mass of yellow sand. Bang, the yellow sand exploded and splattered as if hit by bombardment. But after the roar of the sonic boom passed, the thorny whip was still stuck within the yellow sand. It hadn't been completely blown apart as he had imagined. The yellow sand was seen transforming into a humanoid form at a visible speed, specifically a little giant measuring 2 to 3 meters in height. When its head was fully formed, a thick cloud of smoke immediately emanated from it. You're the demon progenitor who's lived for 1,000 years? Crocodile bit down on his cigar with an arrogant expression. He first glanced at Mizn, whose arm was clamped and unable to move. Then, his right hand, adorned with jewels and rings, grabbed his neck, lifting him up to a height where they could see eye to eye. His gaze was filled with nothing but contempt. So weak you. Mizn was absolutely furious. His already scarlet vertical pupils, his demon eyes, became even more vicious and malicious. Let go of me. While trying to crush the giant's hand bones with his left hand, he frantically whipped the thorny whips on his back and legs, stirring up surging air currents, constantly striking Crocodile up and down, either stabbing or whipping. He paid special attention to vital points like the head and heart. Bang 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 bang, but as he kept hitting, Mizn's expression stiffened. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing. Every part of the giant that he attacked turned into clumps of yellow sand, including the head and chest. And this bastard's expression clearly showed he didn't feel the slightest feeling of pain. Not only that, but the damaged areas were even rapidly producing more yellow sand. In the blink of an eye, all the wounds completely recovered. Is this his blood demon art? No, superpower. He can turn his body into yellow sand and ignore all my attacks? Mizn originally thought his physique, which allowed infinite self-healing and infinite regeneration of his body without consuming stamina, was the most terrifying ability in the world. But now, Crocodile's element transformation made him realize there was something even more abnormal. You. Who exactly are you? While angrily questioning, Mazen also discovered that this person's strength was astonishingly great. With his wrist strength, which could easily crush a human body's head, he couldn't do anything to the hand gripping his neck. He had thought that since the opponent's body could turn into sand, if he could just break his arm, he could escape from this hand. But no matter how hard he tried, this arm, which was much thicker than a normal person's, neither turned into sand nor was broken by him. Instead, his breathing gradually became difficult. Fortunately, this wasn't hard to solve. Mazen simply created another mouth and nose on his bare back. Lord Mazen. Damn it, what's with the sand? Get out of here. Moon breathing, 5th form, moonlit tragedy vortex. Blood demon art, scattered lotus flower. Meanwhile, Kokushibo, Doma, and the other 11 demon moons, as well as Nokheim, were all under attack from the intensifying sandstorm. They could only use various area of effect techniques to constantly push back the surrounding sandstorm. However, Mazen Kibutsuji didn't have the time to bother with them. He had lived for 1,000 years. When had he ever been lifted up by the neck from a condescending height? Especially the opponent's gaze infuriated him even more. What he didn't know was that Crocodile's gaze towards him was actually no different from how he usually looked at the 12 Kizuki. Ah! Let go of me, you damn bastard! Mazen Kibutsuji could no longer hold back. He roared in furious anger. Instantly, an incredibly powerful and terrifying force field aura erupted from his body. It was a shockwave that was almost tangible, crushing Crocodile's body, along with the ground, into scattered yellow sand and wood chips. This scene made Crocodile, who was reforming his body from the yellow sand not far away, show a surprised expression. He was still holding the armless Captain Guts in his hand. Is this the pseudo-conqueror's hockey ability mentioned in the intelligence? He had to admit, he did feel a somewhat familiar mental impact from this shockwave. Indeed, if it were ordinary people or low-level soldiers from the world, they might actually faint. Captain Guts nodded with a solemn expression. It's just that the range is a bit small. It seems the main effect of this move is on the destruction of substance. The mental impact should just be a secondary effect. Ha. Ha. Ha, that's a bit interesting. Crocodile casually tossed Gus, who was in his hand, into the air. Soon, a massive sandstorm supported him there. As for himself, he element transformed again, instantly appearing behind Mazen, who had just finished releasing the shockwave. His wide right hand reached for the back of his neck again. Mazen's expression changed drastically. He was about to move to dodge, but even in terms of speed, the gap between him and the former was too large. Without surprise, his neck was grabbed again. Let me see, how many times can you use that move you just did? Or are you planning to try something different this time? Crocodile, with a cigar in his mouth, lowered himself and leaned his face close to Mazen's ear, who was lifted up again. He sneered mockingly. As he was speaking, thick smoke blew onto the latter's face. At this moment, fear had already appeared in Mazen Kibutsuji's eyes. He was afraid. Chapter 323, The Demon's Natural Enemy, Sand Crocodile. On this day, Mazen Kibutsuji once again recalled the bone-deep fear that Yoriichi Tsujikuni had brought him back then. The slightly rough, warm palm on his neck caused the unease in the heart of this demon progenitor to rapidly spread throughout his entire body like bone-chilling cold air. That shockwave just now was Mazen's ultimate ability. He had originally thought he could use that mental impact, strong enough to cause chaos, spasms, and even brain death in the human nervous system, to deal with this monster whose body had turned into sand. But the effect was merely allowing him to escape for less than 10 seconds. Too strong, this monster was simply too strong. Even if Yoriichi Tsujikuni were resurrected, he couldn't possibly possess this kind of strength, especially since he himself was much stronger now than back then. Run. He had to find a way to escape. As for whether the world government occupied Japan or not, did it have anything to do with him, Mazen? Not a single cent. Thinking of this, Mazen decisively made up his mind, cutting off his own neck with his whip-like arm without hesitation. Then, abandoning his head, he relied on his familiarity with the inside the Infinity Castle, controlling his body to desperately flee towards the right, while rapidly regenerating a new head in the process. Snap! Just then, a crisp snap of fingers came from behind him. Sandstorm Crocodile, unhurried, uttered a word. The next moment, a sandstorm tornado generated out of thin air, blowing away the astonished and angry Mazen. Then, he took large strides and slowly walked over, his black justice coat swaying in the sandstorm. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. I heard that besides sunlight, there's nothing in this world that can kill you. I'm very interested in that. Next, you need to accompany me for an experiment. As soon as Crocodile finished speaking, the wind speed of the sandstorm tornado surged. The sand within it even condensed into sharp sand blades. Ah! In an instant, Mizun Kibutsuji was like being thrown into a pencil sharpener. Amidst his mournful scream, his entire being was cut into large and small pieces of flesh and blood. A large amount of blood spurted out, then was scattered by the tornado. Clearly, although he could self-heal, the pain still existed. When the sandstorm dissipated, under Crocodile's deliberate control, most of the flesh and blood landed neatly on the ground. But just as he was waiting to see Mizun's regeneration performance, the larger pieces of flesh and blood actually grew tender white little hands like a baby's and a pair of eyes. Then, right in front of him, they continued to flee in all directions. This scene left Crocodile stunned, and then he tilted his head back and burst into wild laughter. Ha! 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 Mizun Kibutsuji, you've truly brought your flesh and blood ability development to its limit. On this point, I, Crocodile, admit you are a powerhouse. After speaking, he stopped his gasping laughter, lowered his flat eyes, and sneered. But without my permission, you're not going anywhere. As he spoke, the vast sandstorm inside the Infinity Castle became even more restless. In an instant, the scattered Mizun meat chunks were swept up by surging sandstorms and gathered once again in the air before him. Helplessly, Mizun could only gather all the meat chunks and transform back into his previous human form. At this moment, the expression of this demon progenitor was extremely pale. Having used all his means yet still ending up with this result, it made him feel incredibly helpless, nervousness, and uneasy. Alright, I accept my fate. You all. What are you planning to do with me? What those people want to do with you is none of my business. Right now, I just want to see the limit of your self-healing ability. After speaking, Crocodile snapped his fingers again. Instantly, the sandstorm restraining Mizun began to rotate at high speed again, and it was even faster than before. This time, Mizun couldn't even let out a scream. He was like a tomato thrown into a juicer, turning into a mass of scarlet blood and flesh juice in just a few seconds. Looking at such an extremely cruel screen feed, Crocodile grinned, exhaling thick smoke from the cigar in his hand. A moment later, the sandstorm slowly subsided, with only a little sandstorm still dragging the mass of blood water. Come on, regenerate one for me to see, Mizun Kibutsuji. As expected, Mizun did not disappoint him. The blood water began to move, rapidly growing bones, nerves, muscle, skin, hair, and facial features. In about half a minute, he reappeared completely unharmed before his eyes. It's useless. Besides sunlight, nothing can kill me. It will be the same even if you try hundreds more times. I am willing to join you. Believe me, I will definitely be helpful to your world government. Mizun nervously offered his services. The matter he feared most now was that the monster before him would take him to the surface to bask in the sunday, but Crocodile had no interest in this. Instead, he bit on his cigar, rubbing his chin in thought, while constantly observing Mizun with both eyes. I probably have an idea, but your value is indeed not small. However, it seems there's more than just one demon here. The next moment, he transformed into yellow sand and dissipated from his spot. Despite this, Mizun had no intention of fleeing. Look at the sandstorm filling the entire Infinity Castle. It was clear this was already the opponent's domain. He was worried that running again would anger Crocodile. In other words, he had accepted his fate. On the other side, the 11 demon moons were gathered together, jointly resisting the continuously encroaching sandstorm. However, this vast sandstorm was inherently lifeless. No matter how they used various blood demon arts to disperse it, it had little effect. Right, the cold air released by Doma could freeze some of the sand or create ice walls to block the sandstorm. In this regard, its role was clearly much greater than Kokushibo's. Hold on a little longer, Lord Mizun will definitely be able to resolve this. Upper rank 3's Akaza tirelessly swung his arms and legs, which had turned into after images, continuously unleashing various boxing and leg wind attacks. His confidence came from the 12-cornered snowflake array beneath his feet, which allowed him to clearly perceive that Mizun's aura was still intact. As for hearing and sight, they had long been sealed by the wind and sand. However, in Akaza's view, as long as Mizun couldn't be killed, the final victory would definitely belong to Mizun. Whoosh la la la, just then, a mass of yellow sand suddenly appeared in the middle of the group of demons. Instantly, the expressions of the 11 demon moons changed drastically, because none of them had noticed when it entered. However, this yellow sand appeared suddenly and disappeared just as suddenly. Only Kokushibo was swallowed by it, and then, accompanied by the sandstorm, disappeared without a trace. During this time, the other demons didn't even have time to launch an attack, which left their movements frozen in place. What the hell? What just happened? Meanwhile, Crocodile returned to Mizun Kibutsuji's presence with Kokushibo. Kokushibo was desperately struggling, frantically using Kokushibo's katana in his hand to unleash various swordsmanship techniques fused with moon-breathing and blood demon arts. Although he cut out openings formed by the yellow sand, the damage caused was zero. This made Mizen's eyelids twitch. Your demon's self-healing ability should come from blood or cells, right? Crocodile sneered. Immediately after, his left palm, which was gripping Kokushibo's neck, activated another ability of the Logia system sand fruit, moisture absorption. What? Mizen Kibutsuji watched in horror as his strongest subordinate, upper rank one, rapidly dried up starting from his neck. In the blink of an eye, the muscular man-eating demon turned into a dried corpse of skin and bones. Kokushibo is dead. Through his bloodline perception, he could clearly feel that his connection with the other party had been severed. Indeed, as long as all the moisture inside the body disappears, then whether it's blood or cells, they all become useless. That's right. The man-eating demon's self-healing ability was not some kind of rule-based strength, but originated from the substance of cells. Seeing his speculation confirmed, Crocodile seemed very happy, tilting his head back and laughing loudly. He completely disregarded Mizen's utterly despairing gaze. His body, terrified to the extreme, was even trembling violently, seemingly having escaped his absolute control. Ha! 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 The extremely arrogant, extremely unbridled gasping laughter swept through the Infinity Castle, which was filled with yellow sand and gale, causing all the demons present to feel a chill in their hearts. Because in this world, besides sunlight, another strength capable of instantly killing them had appeared, and it was held in the hands of one person. Chapter 324, Great Panic in Japan. Latest issue of the Mainichi Shimbun. Super sandstorm stops in Hikoji. Come buy a newspaper. Hikoji City experiences the most terrifying sand tornado in history. One by one, 12 or 13-year-old boys with dark skin and dusty hats pushed bicycles beside them, shouting loudly at passers-by. Whenever an adult approached with a coin or paper money, they would smile broadly and pull out a brand new Osaka Mainichi Shimbun from their satchels. Men and women who bought newspapers would either walk to the side of the road alone or gather in twos and threes. Residents in major Japanese cities were all very concerned about the sandstorm that had suddenly appeared in the past few days. Oh my god, it's incredible. Such a huge tornado, isn't Hikoji City completely finished? Fortunately, it's far from us. It's too terrifying. Soon. When they saw the pictures in the newspaper, gasps of astonishment rose and fell on every street. Although limited by the technology of box cameras, the pictures were somewhat lacking in detail and were in black and white, but the angles were quite good. One was a low-angle shot, the other a high-angle shot. The former, from bottom to top, fully displayed the height of the sand tornado, like a tiny human looking up at a towering giant. The latter seemed to have found a mountain body far from the urban area, clearly capturing the appearance of the sand tornado standing in the city center. Given the general characteristics of Japanese cities, which are densely packed wooden structures, coupled with a dense population and narrow roads, one can imagine the doomsday scene there now. The same photos and similar report content were also being distributed through newspapers published by various newspaper agencies in Tokyo, Kyoto, Yokohama, Sapporo, and Kobe. In Tokyo, the capital, the newspapers with the largest circulation were naturally the Asahi Shimbun, founded in 1879, and the Naraku Shinpo, founded only 12 years ago. How can there be such a huge sandstorm? It's not going to come to Tokyo next, is it? No way. This is impossible. Can a desert as small as Tottori create a sandstorm of this scale? Even if you moved all the sand from there, it wouldn't be enough. If people far from Hikoji City viewed all this with a mindset of curiosity, then the citizens of nearby towns were genuinely panicking. Especially the cities directly adjacent to Hikoji City, such as Hino City, Tama City, Akishima City, and Akirino City, where a flow of people moving their entire families had already appeared. A nervous atmosphere began to permeate throughout Tokyo. Meanwhile, the various departments of the Japanese government were in complete chaos. Large numbers of distress calls and intelligence information began to arrive from the affected cities that Crocodile had previously passed through. Based on the preliminary data feedback from the surviving officials in various places alone, the death toll exceeded 5,000, while the number of seriously and lightly injured was countless. A large number of houses were completely destroyed. This didn't even include Hikoji City, as communication there was still cut off. Currently, the Prime Minister and ministers of the cabinet were discussing whether to have the Emperor and key government personnel leave Tokyo temporarily to avoid the situation. Thump thump thump. Just then, an attendant from the cabinet secretariat rushed into the meeting room, which was covered with tatami, and looked at Prime Minister Kato, who was sitting in the main seat. Prime Minister, a report just came from the Japan Meteorological Agency. The sandstorm tornado in Hikoji City has dissipated, but there seems to have been a massive earthquake there. Earthquake? Prime Minister Kato and the ministers of state on either side exchanged glances. Director, it can't be an earthquake. This is a great fissure nearly 300 meters long. If an earthquake with that much energy really happened, there would definitely be strong tremors here in Tokyo. Inside the Japan Meteorological Agency, an earthquake expert shouted urgently, his face red. Then tell me, how did this great fissure appear? Director Natani, who was nearly 50, knew the logic of what the other person said, but besides an earthquake, what else could create such a large opening in the ground? Look at the latest photos that came over. Leaving aside the central zone that was almost leveled, the massive cut, like a blade slicing through the city, was truly too shocking and terrifying. This. The earthquake expert looked at the photos on the table and couldn't speak, thinking to himself. Yes, besides an earthquake, there seems to be no other natural phenomenon that can achieve this effect. But his professional knowledge strongly negated the fact before his eyes. Director, I want to go to Hikoji City myself. While the Japanese government and even the entire nation of Japan were plunged into panic and shock, here on the Sea Star mainland, the committee members of the Multiverse Strategy Committee Command Center were also discussing this matter. Crocodile has already captured Mizun Kibutsuji and Notheim and is bringing Gus and Mekko back. However, he killed all the 12 Kizuki on the grounds that they were too troublesome. Those were excellent experiment materials. Chairman Fernandez sighed repeatedly. He could already imagine the complaining tone and gaze of Director Fritz. I don't think that matters. As long as Mizun Kibutsuji is in our hands, we can have as many demons as we want. Compared to that, Crocodile's ability actually counters these demons, which is something to note. Kongming felt that if there was a need to send Mizun out on a mission in the future, they could use Crocodile's ability to intimidate him. Then let Crocodile personally escort him and not time to impel down. As for how to control them, I'm sure they'll find a way there. Chairman Fernandez said with a smile. That's a good idea. It just so happens that there are still 2 months until the official start of the war, which is enough time for him to go back and forth. Kongming nodded in agreement. It's just that Crocodile made a bit too much of a fuss this time. Look, these are the latest newspapers collected by the dispatched investigators. Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel, who was in charge of administration, pointed at the open newspapers on the meeting table, his tone quite displeased. As we said before, the Aokigahara forest, which served as the source of the super sandstorm, will definitely be a key target of investigation by the Japanese government. Leave this matter to Cypher Paul. After all, they are the professional ones. Our only requirement is not to be discovered within 2 months. Chairman Fernandez said dismissively. Although Crocodile's actions this time seemed reckless, he also tested the depth and capabilities of the Japanese government or this world. Clearly, they had no strength or means to resist a Logia user, or rather, they had no concept of this kind of natural disaster like supernatural power. Just like the content reported in these newspapers, they were completely treated as natural disasters. Actually, this point was quite strange. Although Mizun Kibutsuji and the 12 Kizuki were not very strong compared to their side, they all possessed superpowers. But their secrecy work was too good. Not only did most of the citizens completely treat them as legends, but even the Japanese government didn't seem to have noticed. Regardless, at least his level of importance towards the Japanese government was rapidly declining. Even if they were discovered in advance, what could they do? At most, send out 1 or 2 high-level combatants to block them. This other world, although it had a large population, good technology, and interesting specialty resources, seemed to lack any high-end combatants. This was their major weakness. Chapter 325, The Exposed Demon Slayer Corps Headquarters. While Crocodile was causing a huge commotion, Lucci and Mumai, having been following Sekenji Yorakadaki through the deep mountains and old forests, were completely unaware of the changes happening outside. Perhaps the path to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters was truly this difficult, or perhaps the former water hashier leading the way was being overly cautious and took several detours. In any case, it made the little girl in the group unhappy. Hey, trainer uncle, how much further do we have to go? We've already climbed 4 mountains. Mumai quickly walked a couple of steps to Sekenji Yorakadaki's side, puffing out her cheeks in complaint. However, due to the Tengen mask, she couldn't see his expression at all. We're almost there. About another hour, probably around noon. Sekenji Yorakadaki said in a deep voice, looking up at the sky. Behind them, Lucci followed with a blank expression, occasionally turning to observe the surrounding environment, looking as though he was constantly on alert. But in reality, he was letting the transponder snail on his shoulder see more clearly so that the drawing personnel at the command center could make the map more complete. Although the Vivire card could also guide their direction, it was still necessary to draw the map in advance just in case. It must be said that the deceptive nature of the transponder snail creature was remarkable. On the surface, it looked like a strange-looking snail, and the handset on its back would simply be regarded as decoration. After all, people in this world wouldn't think it could make calls, take photos, or even live broadcast photography. This was a blind spot in their thinking. Sakanji Yorikadaki's estimation of time and distance was very accurate. About 2 hours later, a stone-paved road appeared before the three of them. Its gray-black color was vastly different from the mountain path they had been on. In addition, rows of wisteria trees were planted on both sides of the stone road, which were very beautiful. Are we finally here? Seeing this scene, Mumai breathed a sigh of relief, her face filled with a joyful smile. Yes, I've already sent the Kasugai Crow to report. Just wait a moment, someone will come to meet us from inside. If Sakanji Yorikadaki had returned alone, these procedures would certainly not be necessary. But Lucci and Mumai were not yet members of the Demon Slayer Corps after all. Soon, a young man wearing a black uniform walked over and respectfully said to him, "The master has asked me to lead you and the two guests to the Yubuyashiki estate for a meeting. Do I need to go too?" Sakanji Yorikadaki felt that since he was no longer a Hashira, it was not appropriate for him to enter the manor according to Demon Slayer Corps discipline. Yes, the master said that regarding the matter of Mr. Mitsui and the Kamado siblings, he still needs you to explain it to the Hashira. Oh? You mean those Hashira and Tanjiro are all in the manor now? What happened? Sakanji Yorikadaki asked in surprise. Kamado Tanjiro performed the elimination of the lower-rank demon on Mount Nitagamo, but the insect Hashira, Lord Shinobukacho, discovered that he was carrying a demon with him. A Hashira meeting is currently being held to conduct a trial regarding this situation. The young man from the Kakushi, the logistics department of the Demon Slayer Corps, gave a simple explanation of the situation. So that's how it is. Sakanji Yorikadaki was both shocked that Tanjiro, who had only left him a few days ago, could defeat a 12 Kizuki, and worried about the outcome of the Hashira's trial for him. It's a good thing the letter I wrote earlier should have reached the head's hands by now. Please. Seeing that he wasn't speaking, the young man stepped aside and gestured to Lucci and Mumai, then led the three of them along the stone path towards the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters hidden within the mountain forest. Meanwhile, inside the Yubuyashiki estate, kneeling on the ground were the water Hashira, Jitamiaka, the insect Hashira, Shinobukacho, the flame Hashira, Kyojiro Rengoku, the sound Hashira, Tenjin Yuzui, the mist Hashira, Muichiro Takido, the love Hashira, Mitsuri Kanraji, the serpent Hashira, Obanayagoro, the stone Hashira, Jamai Haimjima, and the wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa, who was pinning Tanjiro to the ground. They were listening to Nichika Yubuyashiki, the daughter of the head, read the letter written by the former water Hashira, Sakanji Yorikadaki. Please forgive Tanjiro for bringing his sister, who is a demon. Nezuko Kamado possesses strong mental power, and thus retains her human sanity. Even when in a state of hunger, she has never devoured humans. She has maintained this state for 2 years. You may find this situation hard to believe at first, but it is an undeniable fact. If Nezuko should ever attack a human, Kamado Tanjiro, along with Sakanji Yorikadaki and Jitamiaka, will commit seppuku to atone for the crime. This was only part of the letter's content. Nevertheless, it still shocked the Hashira below. Only the wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa, was full of displeasure. A few breaths after she finished reading the letter, he immediately spoke. What good would committing seppuku do? If you want to die, just go die and rot away. That guarantees nothing. Following that, the stone Hashira, Jamai Haimjima, also loudly echoed. Just as Shinazugawa said, if she eats a person, the situation will be irreversible. How can we, the Demon Slayer Corps, apologize to that victim? After all, the person killed cannot be revived. That is true. As the master of the Demon Slayer Corps and the head of the Yubuyashiki family, Kageya Yubuyashiki, although his face was severely disfigured by a curse and his eyes had become white eyes, completely blind, he still wore a gentle smile on his face, and his speaking voice was pleasant. We cannot guarantee that she will not attack humans, nor can we prove it. However, we also cannot prove that she will attack humans, because the fact that Nezuko has not eaten humans for over 2 years exists, and 3 people have staked their lives for her. If you wish to deny these things, the denying party must pay something greater than this. Do you all have such will? Furthermore, I have something else I wish to convey to my children. This Tanjiro previously encountered Mizunki Butsuji. What? Although his tone was calm and natural, to the 9 Hashira, it was like a thunderclap in their ears. How is that possible? Not even a Hashira-level individual has ever come into contact with him. The sound Hashira, Tenjin Yuzui, with his snow-white silver hair, looked up in disbelief. You mean this guy? For a moment, All the Hashira's gazes focused on Kamado Tanjiro, who was pinned down by the wind Hashira. Everyone's expression was filled with shock. What does he look like? What is his ability? Where did you meet him? The sound Hashira, Tenjin Yuzui, quickly demanded. Did you fight him in combat? Jitomiyuka, who was the water Hashira but didn't want to admit he was a Hashira, also asked softly. What did Mizen do? Did you find his base? Hey! Answer me quickly. The wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa, was even more agitated, grabbing Tanjiro's hair and fiercely scolding him. However, this also aroused the displeasure of the sound Hashira, Tenjin Yuzui. Shut your mouth. First tell me what Mizen Kibutsuji's ability is. Just as the Demon Slayer Core Hashira were getting excited about the information Tanjiro might have about Mizen, Lucci, Mumai, and Sekinji Yorakadaki were also approaching, following the young man from the Kikuchi. However, when they walked into the manor, what they saw was a strange screen feed of the wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa, confronting a little girl wearing a black kimono in the hall. That girl seems to be a demon at this moment, Mumai sensed Nezuko's or through observation haki. She looked up at Sekinji Yorakadaki in surprise and asked, Uncle, didn't you say the Demon Slayer Core is a tissue that specializes in killing demons? The latter became awkward when asked, rubbing the back of his head, and said, she's different. Lucci, however, was more concerned with the aura of the Hashira, especially the stone Hashira, Jamai Haimjima. Because his aura was not only the strongest, but his physique was over 2 meters tall, about half a body taller than the men and women beside him, and even slightly taller than himself. He hadn't expected such an anomaly to appear in this world full of short people. No wonder this Sekinji Yorakadaki didn't give my height any special look. So that's how it is. Chapter 326, Wind Breathing, Not Bad. All humans are your family. Protect humans. Nezuko Kamado, who was confronting Wind Hashira Sanmai Shinazugawa, stared at his constantly bleeding arm, her expression extremely pained. Saliva dripped continuously from her mouth, which was biting on a bamboo piece, but she desperately suppressed the bloodthirst in her heart. At the same time, beautiful screen feeds of her mother cooking at home, her father resting nearby, and her younger siblings and older brother Tanjiro playing in the cherry blossom grove appeared in her mind. Accompanied by all this was the voice Sekinji Yorakadaki had implanted into her consciousness through hypnosis. This gradually created a firm code of operation in Nezuko Kamado's heart. Humans are beings to be protected and saved. Cannot harm them, absolutely cannot harm them. Humphrey the next moment, under the gazes of the people present, Nezuko Kamado seemed to have overcome her demon instincts. She forcefully closed her reddish demon eyes, turned her head away, and no longer looked at the highly tempting blood. She still bit down hard on the bamboo piece in her mouth, letting the saliva flow out. This scene shocked the wind Hashira and the other Hashira kneeling on the ground outside the hall. A demon could actually do such a matter? What happened? Kageyayubu Yashiki, the head of the Demon Slayer Corps, turned his head and asked his 2 daughters who were accompanying him. Soon, Hingaki, his eldest daughter with red floral ornaments on her white hair, standing to his left, spoke first. The girl who is a demon turned her head away. Immediately after, Nichika, his second daughter with yellow floral ornaments on her white hair, standing to his right, continued. Even though she was stabbed 3 times by Lord Shinazugawa, she endured it and didn't bite him. Kageyayubu Yashiki smiled slightly. Then this proves that Nezuko Kamado will not harm humans. Tanjiro. Hearing the head call his name, Tanjiro, who had just broken free from Serpent Hashira Obanaigaro's suppression by brute strength, quickly raised his gaze filled with worry and nervousness. Even so, there are still people who cannot let go of their doubts about Nezuko Kamado, right? So you must prove it next, prove that Tanjiro and Nezuko Kamado will fight as part of the Demon Slayer Corps and can be useful. Tanjiro was stunned for a moment after hearing this, but he quickly reacted. He prostrated himself on the ground, feeling a sense of relief. He knew Nezuko Kamado was safe. What is this feeling? It makes me feel a bit lightheaded. Is it the voice? Is it because this person's voice makes my brain feel so comfortable? Just as this 15-year-old boy was feeling surprised, the head's peculiar voice came from the platform again. Go defeat the 12 Kizuki. That way, you will be recognized by everyone, and the weight of your words will also change. Tanjiro's spirit immediately lifted. He suddenly straightened up and looked at Kageyayubu Yashiki, making the most resolute vow. I Nezuko Kamado and I will definitely defeat Mizen Kibutsuji. Nezuko Kamado and I will definitely swing our blades and sever this chain of sadness. These words not only made the Hashira look at him with slightly more friendly eyes, but even Kageyayubu Yashiki revealed a kind smile, and the atmosphere in the manor eased. The current Tanjiro probably cannot do such a matter yet, so let's defeat one of the 12 Kizuki first. Yes. Tanjiro immediately realized how arrogant his words were, and his expression instantly turned red. But at this moment, a deep voice interrupted. It's no longer necessary, everyone from the Demon Slayer Corps. Sakanji Yorakadaki watched in surprise as Lucci walked forward on his own, which made him quickly stop him. Wait, Mr. Mitsui, Lord Yubuyashiki hasn't called us yet. Uncle, your memory seems to have a problem. This young man said earlier that he would lead us to meet that Lord Mumai said playfully, blinking her eyes with her hands behind her back. This. Sakanji Yorakadaki's expression under his Teng mask hesitated. He thought to himself. That seems reasonable, but... Mumai's curious gaze switched back and forth between Tanjiro and Nezuko Kamado. She smiled and said. Right, tell me about that little girl first. She looks very interesting. Alright. The situation is like this, she is actually Tanjiro's younger sister, but... Meanwhile, Lucci had already attracted everyone's gaze in the garden. Seeing such a strange person with a katana walking towards them, the Hashira all stood up and became vigilant. Fortunately, at this moment, Kageya Yubuyashiki adjusted the direction he was facing towards the source of the voice and smiled gently. You must be Mr. Hayato Mitsui that Mr. Yorakadaki spoke of? That's right, it's me. Lucci stopped after walking about 4 or 5 meters away from the Hashira. According to Mr. Yorakadaki's description, this Mr. Mitsui was able to resist him head-on without mastering a breathing style, and even imitated water breathing and swordsmanship based solely on his breathing rhythm and movements during their sparring. Furthermore, their power was even greater. He is a person of astonishing talent comparable to Yoriichi Tsujikuni back then. The head of the Demon Slayer Corps seemed to always be like this, able to speak even the most astonishing words calmly and peacefully, fully displaying his leadership charisma and broad heart. What? The current water Hashira, Jitamiaka, being poor with words, didn't say anything, but a shocked expression had already appeared on his face, because his water breathing was also taught by Sakanji Yorakadaki. He can fight against the former water Hashira without a breathing style? Flame Hashira Kyojuro Rengoku was equally shocked. Serpent Hashira Obanayagoro, who had a white snake wrapped around his neck, muttered in disbelief after hearing this. Isn't the key point that he self-taught water breathing and swordsmanship? However, Sound Hashiro Tenjin Yuzui, who was very sensitive to sound, heard this. He roared in anger. Shut up. The key point should be that he's being compared to Yoriichi Tsujikuni. Do you know who Yoriichi Tsujikuni is? Hey, I think we should let those former water Hashira come out and explain how this guy is so astonishingly talented. At this moment, Wind Hashira Sanmai Shinazugawa, whose mood was already bad because of Nezuko Kamado, walked out of the hall with his messy, hedgehog-like white hair and a look of displeasure. Walking towards Lucci, he said fiercely. Which lower rank did he cut down, or which upper rank did he kill? If it's just because he defeated him, shouldn't he admit his own incompetence? Watch your words. As soon as he finished speaking, Water Hashira Jitamiaka appeared in front of Wind Hashira Sanmai Shinazugawa with extreme speed. His eyes, as calm as a lake surface, already contained anger, like the sign of a storm approaching on the Great Sea. TCH. The latter raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything more unpleasant. Instead, he turned to size Lucci up and down, sneering. He is quite tall, and he has a face that doesn't look Japanese. In response, Lucci just glanced at him, looking like he couldn't be bothered to pay attention. Do not be rude. Mr. Mitsui is not only a guest I invited, but will also be a partner of the Demon Slayer Corps fighting alongside us in the future. Although Kageya Yubuyashiki's tone was not very strict, Wind Hashira Sanmai Shinazugawa took it seriously and quickly put away his arrogant and overbearing expression, but the gaze he directed at Lucci was still full of defiance and doubt. Mr. Mitsui, what did you mean by no longer necessary just now? I will explain that later. Before that, I would like to experience the breathing styles of a few other styles. I believe Mr. Yorakadaki, the trainer, has already conveyed this request to you. Lucci's gaze swept over the Hashira. Their aura was indeed stronger than Sakanji Yorakadaki's. Was it because they were younger? Mr. Mitsui means you would like to spar with these Hashira? Kageya Yubuyashiki asked with a smile. Exactly. Lucci nodded. Immediately, Wind Hashira Sanmai Shinazugawa in front of him sneered with a fierce look on his face, and his right hand hovered over the Nichiren blade at his waist. Alright, great. I'll go first. Let me see how powerful the legendary Yoriichi Tsujikuni is. I thought I would never get to experience it in this life, but unexpectedly, a contemporary Yoriichi Tsujikuni has appeared. Only then did Lucci focus his gaze on the opponent, lowering his head slightly, and asked. You are? The current Wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa. I use wind breathing. Seeing this, the others exchanged glances, and then finding that the head had no intention of stopping them, their hearts began to look forward to the performance of this Mr. Mitsui. In fact, these Hashira hoped that Lucci's talent and strength were genuine, as this would represent the emergence of a peerless powerhouse in the Demon Slayer Corps in the future. But the key was that they didn't believe it in their hearts. Looking at his height, which is only slightly shorter than Himejima, he's probably another person with a special constitution. But to say he can imitate others' breathing style and swordsmanship on the spot is a bit exaggerated. Sound Hashiro Tenjin Yuzui said this while looking forward to the upcoming combat. Just as the combat between Lucci and Sanmai Shinazugawa was about to erupt, the command center on the Sea Star mainland had already determined the position of the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. Kong Ming, as the vice minister of the staff department, naturally took charge of the actual command work. While watching the live broadcast screen feeds of Lucci and Mumai on the projection screen wall, he questioned the technicians beside him. How many exploration squads are in this vicinity? How long will it take for them to reach the destination? Report, there are 4 squads. The closest Belloc team will take about 3 days, and the furthest Bessemer team will take about 5 days. Kong Ming shook his head after hearing this. Adding Lucci and them, that's only 10 people. The chance of unexpected situations is a bit high. It is said that these Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps have the strength to easily kill a lower rank. Although their strength is significantly different compared to people from our world, their speed is good, and they also have the ability to predict movements similar to observation hockey. They have at least the combat power of a headquarters lieutenant commander. And these 4 Cypher Pol exploration squads, except for Belloc who is considered elite, the others are probably similar to these Hashira. At this moment, a government official in a suit behind him proposed his idea. Actually, Captain Rasky can talk to that head first. After all, Mizan Kibutsuji and the 12 Kizuki have all been wiped out, so the existence of the Demon Slayer Corps has lost its meaning. They probably need to consider their future prospects. At the same time, Lucci and the Wind Hashira on the projection screen started fighting, or rather, Sanmai Shinazugawa was the first to draw his niche iron blade and launch an attack. He charged forward at high speed while spinning like a horizontal top. First form, Dust Whirlwind Gutter. Suddenly, Sanmai Shinazugawa's 1.79 meter figure instantly disappeared within a green dragon twister. The surging energy, whether from the wind or sword aura, easily shredded the originally flat grass cord along the way. Lucci was also eager to try this out. The novelty brought by this other world was truly exhilarating. He immediately used the water-breathing swordsmanship he had just learned to meet the attack. Although he was confident that a casual tempest kick could break through the opponent, where was the fun in that? 7th form, Drop Ripple Thrust. Lucci lightning fast drew the ordinary katana at his waist. The blade vibrated, turning into an afterimage that was almost invisible to the naked eye, and thrust out along a straight line. As mentioned before, the various elements and sounds produced by the accompanying sword techniques of these breathing styles are all visual effects of overflowing mental power. Therefore, when the attacks of both sides collided in reality, it was still a clash of blade against blade. Just like now, Lucci's blade thrust into the dragon twister. Although there were also ripples like water on the surface of the air and some subtle sounds, the loudest sound was a clanging sound. This guy, Sanmai Shinazugawa, whose movements were stopped by a single strike, changed his expression. On the other side, Water Hashira Jitomiyuka, who was closer to the two, noticed that the power of Lucci's move was not much worse than his own. Did he really learn this just by imitating? Just as the latter's thoughts were filled with surprise, Sanmai Shinazugawa also became serious, displaying the various exquisite and powerful techniques of wind breathing. 3rd form, Clear Storm Tree. 2nd form, Water Wheel. 4th form, Rising Dust Storm. 4th form, Striking Tide. In the court, Lucci and Sanmai Shinazugawa were locked in fierce combat. The overflowing sword aura, accompanied by sparks flying everywhere, raged amidst continuous clanging sounds of strikes. Green gale and blue water waves intertwined. The whistling of wind form tearing through the air and the high-pitched roar of water dragons refused to yield to each other. Large areas of the ground began to crack, and the turf was constantly being lifted. Nearby trees swayed under the influence of the air current, and were occasionally hit by flying sand and stones, creating pit after pit. Seeing this, the observing Flame Hashira, Serpent Hashira, and others quickly shielded the Yubu Yashiki family to prevent their fragile head, who would cough up blood from internal injuries even when laughing loudly, from being directly killed by the aftermath of this sparring. That would be a huge joke. So strong, is this really someone who just started learning water breathing? How does it feel like? Love Hashira Mitsuri Kanraji, with her pink hair, covered her mouth and exclaimed, watching the combat in the court with her light green eyes. Everyone knew what she didn't finish saying. The power of this Mr. Mitsui's water breathing was clearly not inferior to water Hashira Jitamiaka's 8th form, primary gale slash. Suddenly, just as Sanmai Shinazugawa circled Lucci with the speed of a strong wind and delivered a sweeping slash, simultaneously raising a huge circular wind form. Lucci, his opponent, chuckled lightly. The style of the katana in his hand suddenly changed. First form, dust whirlwind gutter. The next moment, he saw his entire body transform into a green dragon twister, colliding with the former's circular wind form. Immediately, an unprecedentedly fierce gale erupted. However, the latter crumbled upon contact, not even lasting 2 seconds. With a loud doing, a niche iron blade with green patterns on its blade flew high into the air, spinning rapidly, and then plunged straight into the ground about 5 meters away from the Hashira. Immediately after, with a muffled bang, the shocked Sanmai Shinazugawa was sent flying backward, spitting out blood, and crashed heavily into the rock garden not far away, knocking down a pile of large and small stones. It seemed his relationship with the other Hashira wasn't very good. Although everyone's gaze was shocked, no one went over to help him up. After all, he didn't seem to have any major problems. As for spitting blood, was that even a matter? Compared to that, the Hashira were more concerned about the wind breathing that Lucci had used, which had actually defeated the current wind Hashira. This wind breathing is not bad, it's easier to use than water breathing. Lucci, however, walked forward slowly, picked up Sanmai Shinazugawa's niche iron blade, and swept his sharp gaze over them. Next Hashira, please step forward. Chapter 327, The Exploding Blade Recipe of the Demon Slayer World. Boom boom boom, continuous thunderous sonic boom accompanied by successive great explosion raged within the Yubuyashiki estate. Such deafening noise and the gunfire flash assaulting their faces made the spectators watching from afar quite uncomfortable. Especially the love Hashira, Mitsuri Kanraji, and Mumai, these two girls, one big and one small, covered their ears tightly. This combat is too noisy. It's killing me, Mumai complained. However, in such a noisy environment, it was difficult to hear her voice unless you were right beside her. This is Mr. Yuzui's sound breathing, we can only endure it. I wonder how much longer he can last against Mr. Mitsui. The love Hashira, Mitsuri Kanraji, leaned close to Mumai's ear and shouted loudly. At this moment, it was already the 3rd day since Mumai and Lucci arrived at the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. That day, after Lucci strongly defeated the wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa, using a wind-breathing sword technique, he successively defeated the water Hashira, Jitamiaka, and the serpent Hashira, Obanayaguro, and similarly performed the act of using their own techniques against them on the spot. This dealt a heavy blow to the 3 views of everyone present. Even Sakanji Yorakadaki, who was the first to witness this kind of technique, was stunned for a long time. From then on, no one questioned the statement that Mr. Mitsui's talent was comparable to Yoriachitsu Jikuni's. At the same time, he received the highest level of welcome from the Demon Slayer Corps, and a lively banquet was held that night. As mentioned before, the greatest significance of the Demon Slayer Corps is killing Mazn. Previously, due to combat power issues, facing demon below the lower rank, these Hashira could easily deal with them. But if they encountered an upper rank alone, they would most likely become meat in the opponent's belly. Over the past few hundred years, far too many Hashira have died at the hands of upper rank. And the appearance of this Mr. Mitsui allowed everyone, including Kageya Yubuyashiki, to see the possibility of eliminating upper rank. What a happy matter this was. Even the wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa, who was taught a lesson by Lucci until he vomited blood, was actually very welcoming of the former's joining in his heart. However, on the surface, he definitely put on a sour face. It's just that Lucci's curiosity was not satisfied by just 3 Hashira, so he proposed that he wanted to continue sparring with the other 6 Hashira. Regarding this, no one had any objection. Firstly, through the 3 combat on the first day, these Hashira had already discovered that Mr. Mitsui's personality was actually not that bad. Although Jitamiaka and Obanayaguro also lost to the opponent, they both stopped before causing serious harm, which proved that Sanmai Shinazugawa received special treatment entirely because of his rude remarks and bad attitude. Secondly, as swordsmen, they all had a relatively strong competitive spirit. Even if they felt they couldn't win, they all wanted to experience the feeling of fighting a powerhouse, and also see if the opponent could imitate their own breathing style. Thus, on the second day, which was yesterday, Lucci again fought with the insect Hashira, Shinabukacho, the love Hashira, Mitsuri Kanraji, and the mist Hashira, Muchero Takido. The result of the matches goes without saying. His focus was mainly concentrated on certain characteristics of these 3 people. The insect Hashira, Shinabukacho's strength was very weak, but her thrusting speed was extremely fast. That kind of force technique was somewhat similar to finger pistol in the 6 powers. And the mist Hashira, Muichiro Takedo's movements, which were elusive like thin mist, were too similar to paper arts in the Six Powers. It's just that he had an extra layer of mist special effect to assist in concealment. Then there was the love Hashira, Mitsuri Kanraji, this beautiful girl who had pink braided hair with green tips. Although her height was less than 1.7 meters, she possessed great strength that was extremely inconsistent with her petite physique. What surprised Lucci the most was that when she tensed her muscles, she could greatly enhance her body's hardness, making resisting blade attacks have no difficulty. What is this? Iron body. Only later through communication did he learn that this love Hashira had a special constitution. Her muscle density was 8 times that of ordinary people in this world, but this also made her food intake for one meal exceed the total of 3 sumo wrestler. Lucci didn't know what the muscle density of ordinary people in this world was, but through specific sparring, he could also feel that the opponent's physique had already reached the level of C-star person, and was even much stronger than most ordinary people. After all, even on the C-star mainland, not many people could train iron body. As for the issue of food intake, it was because the nutritional content of ordinary food was not enough, plus this world didn't have other high-nutrient ingredients. This made him sigh. This girl was truly born in the wrong world. And now, the third day. Lucci's opponent was the sound Hashira, Tenjin Yuzui, and the breathing style and swordsmanship he was currently using were also sound breathing, the same as the opponent's. Fourth form, resounding / without interval. Fourth form, resounding / without interval. One used an ordinary katana, the other used chain dual blades with black and gold blades connected by a chain. Both simultaneously unleashed the same sword technique. Although their movements were slightly different, the high-speed afterimage of the blade, which were so fast they could barely be seen, and the thunderous huge sound were exactly the same. The characteristics of this so-called sound breathing are fast blade speed and loud sound. However, what was strange was that the attacks Lucci unleashed did not produce any explosion or gunfire flash. On the contrary, fierce explosion would always appear every time Tenjin Yuzui's twin swords clashed. And it wasn't some special effect, it was genuine explosion carrying high temperature and air current. It's his blade. In the fierce battle of speed against speed, while Lucci used armament hockey to harden his katana, he narrowed his sharp eyes, examining the chain dual blades in the opponent's hand, which had black backs and gold blades. To be honest, if it were anyone else, they would have long been unable to bear this wave after wave of close-range bombardment. However, relying on strength in all aspects far stronger than Tenjin Yuzui's, even if he didn't have the enhancement of these explosion, just with a faster speed and greater power sound breathing, he was also enough to contend with him. If this thing could be mass-produced. Without any surprise, the big shot of the Otherworld Strategy Committee, who saw all this through the transponder snail, immediately noticed the value of this blade. At the same time, Lucci also noticed an interesting matter. This guy who is said to be a ninja, his strength is actually a bit greater than that love Hashira's. That's strange, clearly the physique of most people in this world is very weak, not much different from Kubanrai world people. He had already realized that the wind Hashira, water Hashira, mist Hashira, and Sekanji Yorakadaki represented the average level of people in this world after physique enhancement through breathing style. People like the insect Hashira with extremely weak arm strength, the serpent Hashira who could function normally without eating for 3 days, and the love Hashira with 8 times the muscle density of ordinary people were those with special constitution. Obviously, the sound Hashira before him should also be special. Rumbling, but no matter how special, after Lucci had figured out his details, he directly increased the force and used the most basic first form, roar of sound breathing, which was simply a downward slash, blasting him away. Swoosh, immediately after, with a jump, he got his hands on the chain dual blades that had flown high. After landing back on the ground, he looked at the beautiful blade with interest, then raised his head to look at Tenjin Yuzui, who was covering his chest and standing up. At the same time, he walked over and returned the twin swords to the opponent. Blade that can explode, truly interesting. May I ask if this kind of blade can still be manufactured? Tenjin Yuzui, who received the twin swords, hesitated for a moment upon hearing the question. Thinking that others also knew about this matter, he honestly introduced it. When manufacturing Nichiren blade, as long as my special Tenjin gunpowder is added, it can give the blade the effect of triggering an explosion with just a little friction. However, this kind of explosion is also equivalent to suicide for others, so only I use it in the Demon Slayer Corps. Lucci's eyes suddenly widened a bit. Kongming and others in the command center within the C-Star mainland also had their eyes light up. Chairman Fernandez was even more delighted and smiling. This Tenjin Yuzui is quite good. Not only can he cultivate those ninja beasts, but he also has such a miraculous gunpowder secret recipe. He's a talent. Recruit him, he must be recruited. Chapter 328 Surrounding the Demon Slayer Corps Headquarters. The intertwined branches of the trees, lushly extending their trembling leaves, wove together into an uneven archway and a mass of emerald green clouds, floating beneath the exceptionally clear azure sky after a recent rain shower. A natural fragrance, a mix of loess and herbaceous plants, permeated every corner of the air. Suddenly, two afterimages swiftly swept past a puddle on the ground, leaping onto the thick trunk of a large tree in the blink of an eye. Only then could their appearance be clearly seen. These were two sturdy men, both with a height of around 1.8 meters, each wearing the same type of kimono, but in different colors, red and black. Their indifferent gaze and agility made them exude an extremely capable elite aura. Headquarters, this is Belloc. We have reached the target location. That's right, he was one of the Cypher Pal 7 agent members who had previously accompanied Charlotte Linlin on a tour of the Kabinari world, and also an ability user of the animal type bird fruit, swallow form. His partner beside him was Poulin, also from Cypher Pal 7 agent, an ability user of the animal type bug fruit, dragonfly fruit. It was precisely because both possessed the ability to fly that they were estimated to arrive here in 3 days. Infiltrate, wait for the other 3 teams, and await the order from Cypher Pal 9 agent Captain Rasky. The hidden earphones in their right ears simultaneously sounded with emotionless instruction, but thankfully, they were already used to it. Yes. On the other side, inside the Yubuyashiki estate. May the next Hashira please step forward. Lucci's meaningful gaze retracted from Tenjin Yuzui, then looked towards the remaining Flame Hashira, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Stone Hashira, Jamai Haimjima. After several days of sparring, coupled with the aura perception from observation hockey, he had gained a relatively clear understanding of the strength of these Hashira in the Demon Slayer Corps. Interestingly, among the Hashira he had fought, he felt that the world's strongest was actually the Wind Hashira, Sanmai Shinazugawa, who had a terrible attitude, while the weakest was the Insect Hashira, Shinabukacho. Below the Wind Hashira, the Serpent Hashira and Water Hashira were similar, except the former's sword technique was more aggressive, while the latter's sword technique had stronger defense, especially the move 11th form, Dead Calm. But no matter how he switched between the sword techniques of various breathing styles, he simply couldn't break through that defense which was like a domain. Finally, through a relatively long period of observation and experience, he once again relied on life return and observation hockey to perform a copy. Relying on his stronger overall strength and being at extremely close distance to the opponent, he used a stronger 11th form, Dead Calm, to break through the opponent's 11th form, Dead Calm. There was no other way. These breathing styles could be considered a basic version of life return. Let's look at the function of breathing style. First, by concentrating the spirit and controlling the breathing rhythm, it strengthens the heart and lung function, thereby allowing the blood to absorb a large amount of oxygen, instantly causing physical ability to greatly increase. And what these Hashira have mastered, the so-called total concentration, constant, is to make this amplified state permanent, allowing the pace of the breathing style to completely become their instinct. Second, by concentrating consciousness to control injured blood vessels and tie them off to stop bleeding. The effect of life return, on the other hand, is to infuse consciousness into the body, allowing complete control over any part of the body, including hair, muscle, blood vessels, blood, and even the internal organs. In addition, there are various other functions related to life force, such as quickly digesting food nutrients, accelerating wound healing, and speeding up stamina recovery. Getting back to the main topic. Below the Serpent Hashira and Water Hashira are the Love Hashira and Mist Hashira. These two are typical examples of having talent but not fully converting it into combat power. The former might be due to personality issues, while the latter is probably still too young, being only 14 years old after all. A genius is a genius, but only a genius. Meanwhile, as Lucci's thoughts raced, the Flame Hashira, Kyojuro Rengoku, and the Stone Hashira, Jamai Haimjima, exchanged a gaze, both seeing a flame-like fighting intent in the other's gaze. I'll go first. I can't wait any longer. The Flame Hashira, Kyojuro Rengoku, was the first to step forward. This was a straightforward man with flame-like orange-red hair and pupils, and a face full of cheerful smiles. He was seen wearing the Demon Slayer Corps black uniform underneath, with a white hari draped over it. The flame pattern drawn on the end of the hari represented that only the Flame Hashira could possess it. A niche iron blade with a flame-shaped crimson tsuba, a white hilt, and a gray sheath was slung at his waist, making his entire person look full of aura, as if a roaring flame lion was appearing behind him, howling at the sky. However, his speaking voice was much louder than that of an average person, which seemed to be a habit of his. Please do, Amitabha. The Stone Hashira, Jamai Haimjima, had no opinion. He clasped his hands together and replied in a deep voice. However, in his blind, lifeless white eyes, there was a hint of tears, looking as if he was about to cry at any moment, which appeared very strange. Then, Mr. Hayato Mitsui, please give me guidance. The flame Hashira, Kyojuro Rengoku, stepped forward to a distance of about 6 or 7 meters away from Lucci, then respectfully bowed to him. He was treating the latter as a senior master who would provide him guidance in swordsmanship. Okay. Lucci nodded calmly. In the court, there was a moment of silence. The instant a tree leaf drifted down to the ground with the wind under everyone's gaze. Kyojuro Rengoku drew his niche iron blade with completely invisible hand speed, and his entire person, bathed in a mass of fiercely burning flame, charged out. First form, Shiranui. This was an assault-type sword technique that could be seen in the accompanying sword techniques of almost all breathing styles. It focused on thrusting in a straight line towards the opponent at the fastest speed. Anyone, human or demon, who couldn't react would have their neck severed or be decapitated by a single blade in an instant. However, this flame Hashira didn't expect such a simple move to have much effect. After all, even the insect Hashira, Shinobukacho's, arguably fastest thrust was easily blocked by this Mr. Mitsui, so he was merely using this first form to quickly close the distance between them. When he appeared before Lucci, having traversed the space of 6 or 7 meters in the blink of an eye, the Nichiren blade in his hand, glowing with streaks of crimson patterns, once again unleashed more flame, launching a continuous and fierce offensive. Third form, Blazing Universe. Second form, Rising Scorching Sun. This was a combination sword technique consisting of a downward slash followed by an upward slash. Of course, the visual effect presented was fiercely burning flame attacking from both above and below. Lucci could even hear the roar of the flame bursting and exploding in the wind, which was incredibly lifelike. Third form, Clear Storm Wind Tree. Lucci, centered on himself, instantly swung out 3 circular green hotei, easily blocking all the intense flame outside. As expected, he still felt that the sword techniques of wind breathing were the most comfortable and convenient to use, but he always felt like something was missing in his heart, thinking how great it would be if there was a breathing style that was faster and more agile. Just as a mass of intense flame and a massive gale inside the manor became increasingly entangled, almost forming a fire tornado when the combat intensified, 2 black shadows silently appeared on 2 large trees outside the manor wall. So this is the element's special effect produced by breathing style? Just looking at it with the naked eye, it's no different from the real thing. TSK, this Lord Captain of Cypher Pol 9 agent seems to be having a great time. The newcomers were naturally Bellic and Poulin from Cypher Pol 7 agent, who had arrived first. The two of them watched the combat scene not far away with great interest, chatting in hushed voices from time to time. However, these people called Hashira indeed have good strength, enough to rival our average members. Bellic chuckled slightly with some excitement. Especially that big guy, his aura is clearly a notch stronger than the others. If we need to take action later, leave him to me. Suit yourself. At this moment, from other directions, more Cypher Pol squads were rushing over at full speed. Chapter 329, What are the 6 powers? What is hockey? Hey, Sister Mitsuri, where did Nezuko and Tanjiro go? I haven't seen them for the past 2 days. Mumai raised her head, shifting her amber gaze from the duel of gale and flame to love Hashira Mitsuri Kanraji beside her. Ever since she heard Sakanji Yorakadaki recount the story of the siblings that day, she had felt a sense of empathy. Nezuko had turned into a demon, but she had Tanjiro by her side, and he was doing his utmost to find a way to turn her back into a human. Just like how Ikuma had once told her he would definitely find a way to turn her back into a human. Such similar experiences made it hard for Mumai not to care about Nezuko. Especially since they were close in age. She was 13 this year, and Nezuko was 14. Hearing the question, the latter widened her large, leaf-green eyes, leaned down, and showed a very warm and cheerful smile. They were sent to Sister Shinobu's butterfly mansion for treatment. She also had a good impression of this super cute little girl and then asked with anticipation. Mumai, you don't know a breathing style yet, right? Do you want to be my Tsuguko? I can teach you love breathing. A Tsuguko is a demon slayer corps member personally trained by a Hashira. They usually choose children with considerable talent, who are highly likely to become Hashira themselves in the future. But I can't use that kind of soft blade like a whip. If I had to choose a breathing style, I think I'd prefer to learn Sister Shinobu's insect breathing. Mumai refused her somewhat sheepishly. How could this be? Love Hashira Mitsuri Kanraji looked quite disappointed, muttering. Sister Shinobu's sword techniques rely heavily on various poisons. But I feel that insect breathing's inherent agility and high-speed movement thrusts are enough even without poison. It's very suitable for someone like me who also lacks strength. Mumai voiced her observations, while thinking to herself. Besides, My future opponents won't necessarily all be monsters like demons with super strong healing abilities. Love Hashira. Mitsuri Kanraji chuckled. But Sister Shinobu already has a Tsuguko. Does that mean I can't learn insect breathing if I'm not a Tsuguko? Mumai asked with a troubled expression on her pretty face. Of course you can. Just then, Shinobu Kacho approached from who knows where, a smile on her face giving off a very calm and gentle feeling. Kanao is learning flower breathing. It just so happens that my insect breathing doesn't have a successor yet. How about coming to my place tonight to take a look? Yes. Mumai's eyes lit up with surprise and gratitude. I love your dance of the butterfly, Caprice, the most. Your posture is truly as light as a butterfly. Thank you, Sister Shinobu. It seems Mumai really likes butterflies. That's wonderful. I have many butterflies there, you know. And since you are Mr. Mitsui's daughter, with your talent, perhaps you might even create a unique butterfly breathing in the future. Shinobu Kacho took Mumai's fair and tender little hand and chuckled, which made Mitsuri Kanraji pout her pink lips and say unhappily. Actually, soft blades aren't that hard to learn either. Alright, you come too tonight. It feels like it's been a long time since we soaked in the hot spring together. Shinobu Kacho was like a perfect older sister, soothing her slight grievance and disappointment with gentle words. Thud, just as the three women were chatting to the side, a sudden clanging sound and the sound of bursting flame erupted from the other side. Lucci's katana, wrapped in flowing flame, turned into a red flash and stopped just before Flame Hashira Kyojuro Rengoku's throat. First form, Shiranui. The former uttered the words unhurried, bringing a burning end to this sparring match, then quickly withdrew his blade and sheathed it. Thank you for the guidance. Kyojuro Rengoku didn't seem discouraged by losing at all. Instead, he laughed heartily with full aura. As expected of Mr. Mitsui, amazing. You can strengthen your training in terms of strength. Since flame breathing follows a blade path that overwhelms with aura, you must ensure you have enough suppressive power. Lucci gave his suggestion in a calm tone. Thank you very much. Kyojuro Rengoku bowed again, then withdrew his niche iron blade and returned to Stone Hashira Jamai Haimjima, saying with a smile. It's your turn. Namu Amida Butsu. The latter clasped his hands together and chanted a Buddhist phrase, then swung the prayer beads in his hand and stepped forward. He stopped after reaching Lucci's opposite side. Finally, it's him. Lucci looked at the monk-like giant before him, who was even taller than himself, with interest. He had neat, short black hair, a distinct long scar on his forehead, wore the Demon Slayer Corps black uniform underneath, and a brown houri with the words Namu Amida Butsu written on it over it. He wore a string of large and trumpet-sized crimson prayer beads around his neck and on his hands. Where is your weapon? Here. Stone Hashira Jamai Haimjima reached behind him under his houri and pulled out a meteor hammer and a broad axe connected by a thick, long iron chain. Is that your niche iron blade? Lucci raised an eyebrow in surprise. The previous Hashira all had katanas, but this guy was so unique. Yes, it contains a very high concentration of scarlet crimson sand iron, thus making it more lethal to demons. The only problem is that it's quite heavy, Namu Amida Butsu. Jamai Haimjima explained simply, but his words left the Hashira watching from afar speechless. It's not quite heavy, it's ridiculously heavy. Although I can lift it, I can't use it for combat at all. What a flamboyant weapon. Sound Hashiro Tenjin Yuzui couldn't help but complain. Is that so? If that's the case, there's no need to imitate your stone breathing. Lucci considered for a few breaths, then, under everyone's shocked gazes, he threw the katana at his waist to Mumai and stood empty-handed. I've been fighting using your methods until now. Next, it's time to show my combat style? A bunch of big question marks appeared above the heads of those Hashira. Could he be planning to fight Brother Haimjima barehanded? Mitsuri Kanraji could hardly believe the words she was saying. It seems so. Obaniguro said with a frown. Has defeating 8 of us made Mr. Mitsui so arrogant? No, father's barehanded strength is even stronger than when he uses a blade. After speaking, Mumai blinked playfully. However, no one believed her words, only taking it as a child's blind adoration for her father. As for Jamai Haimjima, the person involved, he first exchanged glances with Lucci. After confirming that the other party wasn't joking, he didn't say anything more. Then allow me to witness your superb moves, Namu Amida Butsu. As soon as his voice fell, he immediately made the first move. Since Hayato Mitsui had given up the first attack in the previous few combat, there was no need to be overly polite. The stone Hashira's arm instantly solidified as he exerted force, his muscles bulging in knotted cords. The next moment, the iron chain in his palm shook and vibrated, and the meteor hammer and broad axe were swung out with a roar, tearing through the air along the way and emitting 2 explosive sounds. First form, Serpentinite Bipolar. However, His stone breathing didn't seem to have the flamboyant elemental special effects like other breathing styles, only a faint layer of gray energy attached to the weapon. But its momentum was no weaker than the latter. The whistling sound that caused the air to tremor fully displayed the powerful sense of power of this move. Yet, facing such a fierce attack, Lucci merely raised his right hand, and as he clenched his fist, a layer of black with a metallic sheen appeared out of thin air on his skin. Dong! The next moment, the pitch-black fist first smashed open the meteor hammer, creating a sound like a striking bell, then the fist turned into a palm and slapped away the broad aches on the other side. This scene stunned everyone except Mumai. But Lucci paid no mind to the feelings of these Hashira. He stomped on the ground beneath him, leaving trails of afterimages as he charged forward rapidly. Fourth form, Ryali Trapid Conquest. Although Jamai Himejima was blind, he could clearly understand Lucci's movements through the tremor within a certain range. Although he felt equally incredible in his heart, his response was not slow. He forcefully rotated the iron chains with both hands, controlling the flying meteor hammer and broad axe to spin, attacking Lucci's back at an extremely high speed. Finger pistol. Lucci had already closed in on the opponent. Ignoring the whistling sound behind him, his bent right hand index finger shot out like a bullet. Clang, however, this super high-speed movement finger pistol at such close range was precisely blocked by the straightened iron chain between the stone Hashir's hands, and the iron chain was very tough, showing no signs of breaking. But Lucci's finger pistol did not end there. It spread out like buckshot in front of him, covering the opponent from top to bottom. In an instant, fingers and iron chains engaged in dense and fierce offense and defense, and rapid clanging sounds erupted in the court. Such keen perception. Seeing that the opponent could protect his entire body impenetrably with just a slightly thicker iron chain, Lucci realized that the stone Hashir's spirit perception had completely reached the level of observation hockey. Instant transmission. Suddenly, Lucci turned into an afterimage and disappeared from his original spot, dodging the meteor hammer and axe blade that were about to hit his back, and instantly reappeared behind Jamai Himejima. What? The latter had not expected Lucci's speed to become so fast. He felt that this had exceeded the limit that a human body could achieve, comparable to the blood demon art of those demons, which is a superpower. Bang! With a muffled sound, Jamai Himejima's back was hit by a heavy kick, and he flew forward with a groan of pain. But during this process, he heard the Hayato Mitsui say another strange term. Tempest kick. The next moment, the stone Hashir's expression changed drastically. Ignoring the pain in his back, he twisted his body with all his might, quickly pulled the iron chains in his hands, and continuously swung the meteor hammer and axe blade around himself as the center, barely forming the move a second before the sharp tearing sound approached. Third form, stone body skin. More than a dozen gray scratches formed a net, blocking a bright blue crescent moon-shaped energy blade. Although it was blocked, the powerful energy contained within the latter knocked the stone Hashira flying again. Oh my god, what? What is that? Mitsuri Kanraji subconsciously covered her mouth with her hands, already too shocked to control herself. It wasn't just her. Flame Hashira Kyojiro Rengoku, Sound Hashiro Tenshin Yuzui, and everyone else, without exception, had expressions of utter astonishment. He could block Brother Himejima's meteor hammer and axe blade barehanded, instantly flash behind someone, and now even kick out Hotei that tear through the air with just his legs? Is this really something a human can do? That's the six powers, a martial arts that surpasses the human limit of physical ability. Mumai stepped forward at this moment, with her hands behind her back, standing on her tiptoes, and with a beautiful smile, she began to introduce them to these Hashira. The moment Lucci used the six powers, she knew he was going to reveal his hand to the Demon Slayer core, and she also had a hidden earphone in her right ear. The move father used earlier, the continuous jabs with his finger, is finger pistol from the six powers. It gives the finger the speed and power of a bullet, easily piercing steel. The move that instantly appeared behind the stone Hashira is instant transmission. It involves stepping on the ground dozens of times at high-speed movement in an instant, using the resulting explosive reaction force for super high-speed movement. Then the Hotei he kicked out is Tempest Kick, a martial arts that creates a vacuum slash through super high-speed movement and powerful kicks. The little girl gave an explanation of each technique one by one, counting on her fair and tender fingers, under everyone's gaze, in a rather romantic manner. Besides these, there's also Iron Body, which makes the body as hard as steel, Paper Arts, which allows the body to become as light and thin as paper, and Moonwalk, which lets you walk freely in the air by stepping on it. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but as Mumai spoke, Lucci demonstrated the actual effects of Iron Body, Paper Arts, and Moonwalk in the court in the combat. He first took the swinging meteor hammer and axe blade head-on with his body completely unharmed. Then, he released all the strength from his body, using the changes in the air current generated by the axe blade and meteor hammer to easily dodge wave after wave of attacks at the last moment. Finally, he leaped directly into the air, truly stepping on the invisible air, shifting his position amidst bursts of air explosions, and finally knocked down Jamai Haimjima, the Demon Slayer Corps' strongest stone Hashira, with a single punch. Silence, dead silence. Apart from the occasional sound of wind blowing across the ground, the Yubuyashiki estate seemed to fall into a moment of space-time stagnation. Then, can you do that too? Shinobukacho asked Mumai, suppressing the gale and giant waves in her heart. I can't, because the prerequisite for cultivating the 6 powers is to have physical ability that surpasses the human limit. Mumai scratched the back of her head awkwardly and gave a bitter smile. So, when Mr. Mitsui took the meteor hammer head-on barehanded earlier, it was because he used iron body from the 6 powers. The person asking was Love Hashira Mitsuri Kanraji, because she felt that the effect of iron body was the same as when she tensed her muscles. No, father's hand turned black at that time, didn't it? That was armament hockey. Mumai gave a sweet smile and said. It's an ability that turns will into armor to enhance the body's defense and attack power. Generally, we can't see hockey, but he used a technique called hardening. This technique condenses hockey to produce that pitch black color. So, can you do that too? No, because armament hockey also requires a certain physique to support it. But I can use observation hockey. Mumai quickly said. Just as she was about to give an explanation of what observation hockey was, Lucci walked over and looked at the Lord Kageya Yubuyashiki and all the Hashira present. Next, we need to talk inside, about Mizunkibutsuji and the 12 Kizuki being completely wiped out by us, and also about the matters concerning the world government. Chapter 330, Is the Demon Slayer Corps going to disband? In the blink of an eye, the Demon Slayer Corps members were gathered in the hall. Perhaps it was the overwhelming aura from Lucci's 9 consecutive victories against the Hashira, or perhaps it was the incredibly astonishing 6 powers he displayed. Of course, it could also be the shocking information he provided about the complete elimination of Mizunkibutsuji and the 12 Kizuki. Everyone subconsciously chose to follow his suggestion and come inside. As for the mention of the world government, it was overlooked by them. At this moment, Kageya Yubuyashiki sat at the head seat, with Hinaki and Nichika sitting behind him on either side. Across from him sat Lucci, and slightly behind him was Mumai. The 9 Hashira and the former water Hashira Sakanji Yorakadaki sat on the left and right sides. The atmosphere was very solemn and serious. Lord Hayato Mitsui, you said that Mizunkibutsuji and the 12 Kizuki were completely eliminated by you. May I ask if this is true, and what does you mean? Kageya Yubuyashiki, as the master of the Demon Slayer Corps, spoke first with great solemnity. First of all, Hayato Mitsui is my alias. My real name is Lucci. Mumai is not my daughter, she is my subordinate. Lucci's expression remained calm and composed, while the Hashira on both sides showed surprise upon hearing this. Mumai, who was behind him, gave an awkward smile towards Shinobukacho and Mitsuri Kanraji, feeling a bit embarrassed about having deceived them. As for Mizunkibutsuji and the 12 Kizuki, they were all completely eliminated inside the Infinity Castle 2 days ago by Vice Admiral Crocodile of our army. Hearing Lucci's words, the higher-ups of the Demon Slayer Corps fell into silence. Their first reaction was that this person was spouting nonsense. However, the strength Lucci had shown earlier prevented them from speaking out their doubts carelessly. May I ask what the Infinity Castle is, and are you 2 officials of the Japanese government? Kageya Yubuyashiki asked in a deep voice. The Infinity Castle is Mizunkibutsuji's headquarters, located underground in Hikoji City. And we are from the world government, not the Japanese government. After speaking, Lucci began operating the visual Den Mushi on his shoulder, changing it from a live broadcast to a relay. The screen feed for the relay was provided by the command center on the Sea Star mainland. Soon, 2 beams of radiance projected from the Den Mushi's eyes, forming a square virtual screen in midair. This startled the Hashira on both sides. The moment the radiance appeared, Stone Hashira Jamai Haimjima and Flame Hashira Kyojiro Rengoku, who were closest to Kageya Yubuyashiki, immediately stepped in front of the master to guard him. At the same time, Wind Hashira Seinmai Shinazugawa, Water Hashira Jitamiaka, Serpent Hashira Obanayagoro, and others also quickly stood up, their right hands hovering over their Nichiren blades, staring intently at Lucci and Mumai. Although they didn't know what the world government was, they could tell that these 2 people were from another organization. Furthermore, the Den Mushi's ability to project footage was too similar to a demon superpower, leading the Hashiro to suspect it was actually a snail-shaped demon. Ah, Sister Shinobu, Sister Mitsuri, don't be scared. This is a transponder snail. I was very shocked the first time I saw it too, but it really isn't a threat. Mumai quickly stood up and rapidly explained the function of the transponder snail, which caused the surrounding Hashira to hesitate. They had heard of telephones, but they truly didn't know about visual transponder snails, let alone this kind of biological telephone. It was simply unbelievable. Fortunately, Mumai's words had some effect, preventing the Hashira from making any rash moves. At this moment, the virtual screen in midair began playing extremely clear dynamic footage, deeply capturing the gaze of everyone present. The screen feed first showed the intense battle footage of Captain Guts, Meko, Mizunkia Butsuji, and the 12 Kizuki. Actually, these Hashira had never seen Mizunkia Butsuji, nor had they encountered these upper rank and lower rank demons. The reason for this was simple. If a lower rank demon encountered them, it would certainly be eliminated directly and wouldn't appear in the footage. And if they had encountered an upper rank demon, they would likely not be alive now, let alone have encountered Mizunkia Butsuji. However, based on the strength they displayed and the numbers in their pupils, they were indeed very likely the 12 Kizuki. And when Shinobu Kacho's murmuring voice appeared, it was completely confirmed. Rainbow-like irises, a purple hat, a spot on his head that looks like it's been drenched in blood, plus that carefree smile always on his face. There's no mistake, that white-haired demon is the one who killed my sister. It was well known that only an upper-rank demon could kill a Hashira in a one-on-one fight. Sister Meko, be careful. At this moment, Mumai, watching the footage of Meko being surrounded by numerous upper-rank and lower-rank demons and constantly in a dangerous situation, also became subconsciously nervous. Speaking of which, neither she nor Lucci had actually seen this before. Especially Lucci, with his seasoned eye, could easily see that the strength of those upper-rank demons was no less than that of Cypher Paul's elite members. Therefore, he wasn't surprised when he saw Meko being captured alive by them. However, the strength displayed by Mizunkia Butsuji was indeed troublesome even for this Cypher Paul 9 agent captain. Even if he and Captain Guts were to swap places, he felt he would only last one day longer. Ah! Captain. When Mumai saw Captain Guts have an arm blown off by Mizun, her small face was filled with worry and fear. Similarly, the surrounding Hashira's faces turned pale upon witnessing Mizun's strength. With their current strength, even if all of them attacked together, they would likely not even be able to get past the 6 upper-rank demons. Thinking back, they had previously boasted about finding and killing Mizun. Now it seemed they were truly ignorant of their own limitations and overestimating themselves. Finally, the climax of the footage arrived. Grains of sand, illuminated by the light, fell from above like a golden, sparkling rain. Immediately after, a sky full of sandstorm filled every corner of the Infinity Castle. Ha 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 ha! Not long after, a figure nearly a foot taller than the 2-meter-20 Jamai Heimjima emerged from a mass of yellow sand. That characteristic gasping laugh echoed from the Infinity Castle 2 days ago to the Yubuyashiki estate 2 days later. The subsequent process was somewhat explosive. The demon progenitor, whom the Demon Slayer Corps Hashira considered incredibly powerful and completely invincible, was actually beaten by Vice Admiral Crocodile with no ability to fight back. Why can his body turn into sand? Is he not human? Sound Hashiro Tenjin Yuzui's eyes widened. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing, because in their impression, normal humans couldn't have superpowers. As for the elemental phenomenon produced by breathing style and swordsmanship, how could that be considered a superpower? That was a normal and reasonable phenomenon. That is element transformation of a Logia user. The ability comes from a C-star secret treasure called a devil fruit. Mumai once again took on the role of commentator, introducing them to the matter of devil fruits. However, this led Love Hashira Mitsuri Kanraji to ask curiously. Are you one too? Ah, well. I'm not. Mumai awkwardly curled her toes into the ground and said. The points needed to exchange for devil fruits internally are very high, and I only joined Cypher Paul not long ago. And if I were to buy one, it would cost at least 100 million Bailey. I don't have that much money. What is Cypher Paul? What is Bailey? The Hashira present felt as though one novel thing after another was coming out of Mumai and Lucci's mouths. The screen feed automatically disappeared after Crocodile absorbed Kokushibo with one hand. Although they didn't see the very end, based on Lucci's earlier words completely eliminated. They could imagine the fate of Mizunkia Butsuji and the 12 Kizuki. They were definitely all killed. Now, a very important question was placed before the Yubuyashiki family and the entire Demon Slayer Corps. What should they do next? Disband? Chapter 331, The Demon Slayer Corps Sleepless Night. I presume everyone has realized the question of where the Demon Slayer Corps will go from here. Lucci consistently faced Kageya Yubuyashiki and his 2 daughters. When the footage was playing earlier, the latter leaned close to the former's ear, explaining the screen feed content sentence by sentence. This problem is very easy to solve, join the world government. Then what is the world government? Kageyayubu Yashiki softly voiced the question on everyone present's minds. Regarding the world government, because it is too great, it's difficult for me to explain it clearly in just a few words. Therefore, everyone needs to watch another piece of footage. Please wait. After speaking, Lucci raised his hand and pressed a button on the transponder snail again. This time, although the Hashira present still felt it was miraculous, they didn't lose their composure as they did before. Soon, this transponder snail projected two beams of light again, converging in midair to form a high-definition virtual screen. It opened with a floating white emblem of a 5-circle cross. Then the camera began to zoom out, and everyone immediately realized this was actually a flag swaying in the wind. Following that, the magnificent world government headquarters, like a towering mountain, came into view. Kyojiro Rengoku and the others had never seen such tall artificial buildings. Each of those 5 white cylindrical buildings was over 1,000 meters in height. Meanwhile, a narration began. The world government is the largest international organization in the Sea-Star world, ruling all countries and islands in the Sea-Star world. Its supreme leader is the Supreme Executive Committee, also known as the 5 Elders. Its direct subordinate organizations include the spy agency Cypherpol, the Army headquarters, the Marine headquarters, Impel Down Great Prison, and so on. To facilitate the personnel of the Other World Strategy Committee in introducing the world government in other worlds, the media agency of the propaganda department specifically produced this promotional video. Although the content involved wasn't extensive, it clearly explained what the world government is, and what other worlds and stargates are. Interspersed within were scenes depicting the scale of the Marines and Army's troops, and battles between Sea-Star powerhouses that resembled natural disasters. Without exception, these screen feeds directly shattered the world views of these Demon Slayer Corps higher-ups. Whether it was Stone Hashira Jamai Haimjima, Flame Hashira Kyojiro Rengoku, or Wind Hashira Sanmai Shinazugawa, every single one of them was dumbfounded, their eyes wide as could be, and their mouths unconsciously hanging open for a long time. Even Hingaki and Nichika, who had been explaining the screen feed content to Father, were too shocked to speak. Ding-a-ling, when the transponder snail retracted the finished footage, a crisp wind chime sound rang out from somewhere. A gentle breeze blew into the hall, circled around, and woke everyone present. Immediately after, Hingaki and Nichika quickly told Kageyayubu Yashiki everything they had seen. A moment later, this master spoke. So you are people from another world, coming to our world for conquest. His voice still sounded so relaxed and pleasant, but it carried a clear note of heaviness, because what he actually wanted to say was invasion. But the world government's power and strength forced him to be careful with his words. It should be said that we are inviting this world to affiliation with the world government. Lucci specifically emphasized the words invite and affiliation, because it sounded more acceptable this way. Now that Mizunkibutsuji has disappeared from this world, and the 12 Kizuki have been elimination, aside from the demon still at large, no new demon will appear in the future. So, will the Demon Slayer Corps disband now, taking your breathing styles and swordsmanship with you, and vanish into the long river of history? I presume none of you would want that. So, join us. The world government will arrange you into the most suitable departments based on your talents, allowing you to continue shining. After speaking, his gaze focused on Kageyayubu Yashiki's face, which was severely disfigured by his disease. At the same time, our medical academy definitely has a way to treat your disease, and even change your family's fate of being frail, sickly, and not living past 30. As soon as these words were spoken, both the 2 daughters by Kageyayubu Yashiki's side and the Hashira all showed expressions of excited surprise. That's impossible. Our Yubu Yashiki family was cursed by the gods because of our bloodline connection to Mizunkibutsuji. Kageyayubu Yashiki, however, was somewhat disbelieving. Nothing is impossible. Whether it's an illness or a curse, the world government will have a way to solve it. If you ask why, it's because we are the world government. Immediately after, Lucci looked at the blind stone Hashira Jamai Haimjima and said, "Of course, your eyes are even easier for the medical academy." This moved Jamai Haimjima. Lucci then said to the other Hashira, "As swordsman, don't you want to come into contact with more advanced swordsmanship and greater strength? To put it bluntly, with your current strength, you are only at the level of ordinary Cypherpol members. And our numbers are close to 10,000. Then, he unleashed a major weapon. Also, are you interested in the scenery of other worlds? Are you interested in the yokai and powerhouses from other worlds?" This. As expected, warmongers like Kyojiro Rengoku, Tenjin Yuzui, Jitomiyuka, and Sanmai Shinazugawa were deeply attracted. Of course, there were also people like Mitsuri Kanraji and Shinobu Kacho who weren't very interested in increasing their strength. However, the former thought that perhaps in other worlds, she could find a stronger ideal husband than herself, while the latter thought about the various unseen toxins, medicinal materials, and medicine from other worlds. It must be said, the other world holds immense temptation for most human, because it represents all unknown possibilities. Then if we choose to join, will we have to go live in your world called Sea Star? Kageya Yubuyashiki asked, suppressing the excitement in his heart and maintaining a calm tone. Why was he excited? Not for himself, but for the future of the Yubuyashiki family. Of course. The medical academy is in the Drum Kingdom in Sea Star. Someone will make proper arrangement then. After hearing Luchi's words, Kageya Yubuyashiki nodded. After a moment of contemplation, he gave his answer. Excuse me, but because the information volume received is too large, we need some time to calm down. Could you give us a few days to discuss? Yes. Luchi put on a thoughtful expression and then said. How about 3 days? Alright, then we will meet here again in 3 days. With that, the world government completely laid out its cards to the Demon Slayer Corps. The sky gradually turned to night, and Mumai, according to their previous promise, arrived at Shinobukacho's home. This place was also a medical treatment institution within the Demon Slayer Corps logistics organization, providing treatment and rehabilitation for injured members. The nursing staff were mostly composed of members without swordsmanship talent, and it was called the Butterfly Mansion. Here, Mumai saw Tanjiro again, but the latter was lying unconscious on the hospital bed, while Nezuko Komodo sat quietly by the hospital bed, accompanying him. Nezuko Komodo was like this, hiding in the wooden box during the day, and coming out at night to sit by her older brother's side. Because Nezuko Komodo still couldn't speak, Mumai was also unable to communication with her. This made her feel quite regretful. It would be great if she could become friends with her. Ah, so comfortable. It's been so long since I soaked in a hot spring. At this moment, Mumai, Shinobukacho, Mitsuri Kanraji, and a quiet girl named Kanao Tsuyuri were gathered naked in a steaming hot spring. This directly resulted in the blue light heart on Mumai's chest being exposed before the three of them. Mumai, you. Mitsuri Kanraji covered her mouth in shock, unable to speak. Shinobukacho and her adopted child, Kanao, were also full of surprise. Yes, I am a Kabanari, a half-human, half-Kabanari existence. Captain Guts and Sister Mihuo, whom you saw before, are also Kabanari. As for what a Kabanari world is, that requires talking about my ancestral world. Mumai leaned against the stone wall at the edge of the hot spring, looking up at the starry river in the night sky. While recalling her past experiences, she began telling her story. Meanwhile, for the Demon Slayer Corps higher-ups, this night was destined to be a sleepless night. Chapter 332, Mizn visits the Biochemical Research Institute. The Demon Slayer Corps headquarters is hidden among towering mountains and steep ridges. The dense vegetation makes the nights here very cool, though there are quite a few insects. In the master bedroom in the manor backyard, Yubuyashiki Amon sat beside her husband, holding his arm, listening to his words and the chirping of insects from outside. Her original name was Jinguamon. She was an extremely beautiful woman with snow-white silver hair, even called the White Birch Tree Fairy by Mist Hashira Muchiro Takido. The Jing clan is an ancient bloodline of Shindo priests in Japan, naturally possessing much stronger life force than ordinary people. To help the Yubuyashiki family continue their bloodline as much as possible, they married into the latter's family heirs generation after generation. But even so, the Yubuyashiki boys could not live past 30. Amon married Kageya Yubuyashiki when she was 17 and he was only 13. Originally, she was dissatisfied with this unfree arranged marriage. But after meeting Kageya Yubuyashiki, he said to her, "If you don't like it, I will refuse this matter." These words, so considerate of her stance, ultimately made her decide to marry him. Over the years, she had given birth to 1 son and 4 daughters for him, and had worked hard to be a perfect wife, helping him manage the various affairs of the Demon Slayer Corps. Amon, I saw it. Kageya Yubuyashiki's blind eyes seemed to be looking through the bead curtain on the window, gazing at the Milky Way in the sky, speaking a meaningful sentence. Is it our future life? Yubuyashiki Amon was not surprised by this. She looked at her husband's face with a slightly curious gaze. Yes, it's a place called the Flower Capital. Many cherry blossom petals are fluttering in the air, and I also saw you and Gariya with happy smiles. It sounds like we're doing well. Yubuyashiki Amon showed a joyful, gentle smile. She knew that the men of the Yubuyashiki family would awaken a future sight ability. Past family heads used this ability to do business outside and earn enough wealth to provide the large amount of funding needed by the Demon Slayer Corps. This future sight ability could be said to be both controllable and uncontrollable. It was controllable in that he could decide when to activate the ability, but uncontrollable in that the time point of the future sight was random. What he saw was just a screen feed of something that would happen within roughly a year. However, I also saw the future of this country, a future filled with war and death. Kageya Yubuyashiki's mood was heavy at this moment. Clearly, Lucci's invitation and affiliation were not friendly negotiations, but extremely forceful military aggression. Just as he had said before, this was conquest. Yubuyashiki-amon had heard about the various matters that happened in the afternoon, so she naturally understood what her husband meant. We can't stop it, can we? But I'm wondering if I should give the Japanese government a little warning. After all, we have been inheriting our bloodline in this country for thousands of years. Kageya Yubuyashiki fell into hesitation and distress. The feeling of knowing a great disaster was about to happen but having to keep silent, and even having to go live in the aggressor's world, made this gentle-to-the-bone man feel tormented. Yubuyashiki-amon could understand her husband's feelings. She reached out her slender palm and placed it on his cheek. Even if you put these matters on the Prime Minister's desk, would they believe it? Even if they believed it, what could they do? Saying this, she took out a newspaper from a nearby drawer, looked at the picture on the front page, and said softly, "This is the latest Asahi Shimbun. It reports that the urban area of Hikoji City has been destroyed into ruins by a super sandstorm, and a great fissure appeared, up to 17 meters deep, 5 meters wide, and over 400 meters long, with severe desertification at the edges." These words plunged Kageya Yubuyashiki into a long silence. He knew what his wife wanted to say. This must have been a grand gesture by Vice Admiral Crocodile. Such a powerful combat power, comparable to a natural disaster, was simply invincible to the Japanese government. And such an existence was merely a vice admiral in that world government. Who knew how many vice admirals they had? Who knew how terrifying the admirals above them were? Perhaps, they could be told to evacuate the people in advance. But if the world government found out about this, wouldn't it cut off the chance that might change the Yubuyashiki family's fate, and also ruin his family's happy future? Ah! In the end, the master of the Demon Slayer Corps could only let out a long sigh. The next morning, Lucci stood by the window of the guest room, quietly watching the large number of crows flying out like dark clouds. This was the Demon Slayer Corps recalling their dispatched members. After all, joining the world government and going to the Sea Star world was a monumental event, so a conference had to be held with everyone. Those who were willing would go together, and those who were not would naturally stay. A moment later, Lucci took out a transponder snail and began to report the situation of the Demon Slayer Corps to the command center of the Other World Strategy Committee. Sea Star World. In the first half of the Grand Line, within the world government's exclusive Triangle Current, a marine warship was sailing at extreme speed through the rapids. Mizan Kibutsuji stood by the round window, numbly watching a giant iron gate slowly closing behind him. The 5-circle cross imprinted on the gate was so blinding. He already knew the truth about the world government. Along the way, he first saw the Black Army continuously pouring in, then the magical stargate that could travel between two worlds, and also the vast, reddish land. Naturally, he also knew where he was heading now. He heard it was a large prison called Impel Down. Behind Mizan stood a woman wearing a black kimono, with long black bangs covering half of her face. It was his attendant, not him. For hundreds of years, it was thanks to her blood demon art that the teleportation function of the Infinity Castle had been operating normally. Now, this world government seemed to have taken a liking to this ability of hers. As for the 12 Kizuki, they weren't so lucky. Thinking of this, Mizan turned his head and glanced expressionlessly at Crocodile, who was sitting leisurely in a chair with his legs crossed, constantly puffing out cigar smoke. It was because of the presence of this man, like the desert god in myth, that even without any physical restraints, he didn't dare to have the slightest thought of escaping. Soon, this warship arrived in front of the steel gate of the great undersea prison. It was the same as always, 8 marine warships were stationed outside the high walls at all times. The sense of oppression that rushed over was enough to make one feel suffocated. At this moment, Impel Down, having received the news, had already set up its situation. Dozens of prison guards holding rifles stood on both sides of the stone bridge, their eyes fixed straight ahead. "Welcome back, Vice Admiral Crocodile." Magellan, wearing a black uniform with batwing decorations on his back, looked down at the approaching Crocodile and greeted him. "Hey hey." Crocodile's mouth twitched at his greeting. "Another giant." Mizan Kibutsuji looked speechlessly at Magellan, who was estimated to be nearly 5 meters tall. For him, a demon under 1.8 meters in height, the 2.5-meter tall Crocodile was already very tall. "So this is the prisoner from the other world? You are very lucky, because you are the first, enough to be recorded in Impel Down's history." After speaking, Magellan waved his hand and said, "Come with me, you still need to go through a few procedures. Let me warn you, this guy is no weaker than me. You'd better be honest." Crocodile bent down and whispered a warning in Mizan's ear, then turned and left without another word. He truly didn't want to stay in this place for another second. Mizn didn't reply. In fact, he didn't need to be told, he could feel the dangerous aura emanating from Magellan himself. When he and Nottheim, accompanied by a group of prison guards, passed through an upward-rising iron bar gate, they arrived inside the stone building on the sea level. No, don't. Save me. I don't want to go down. Instantly, desperate pleas for mercy, painful, miserable screams, and various sounds filled with negative emotions poured into the ears of Mizn Kibutsuji and Nottheim. Well, you really can't say anything. Upon hearing these sounds, Mizn not only felt no fear or nervousness, but instead showed an expression of enjoyment. To be honest, if he weren't a prisoner, he would actually quite like the atmosphere here. Come here, you two. Put the three-piece set on him. Magellan gave the order to Gecko Moria and Tarklama, who were glaring at each other not far away. Because Tarklama's shadow had been cut off by Moria earlier, the two had developed a grudge. Although he knew this was a decision by the world government's higher-ups to guard against him, he could only find trouble with Moria. So whenever they met, he would speak sarcastically, and sometimes when things got heated, they would even exchange a few blows, only to be taught a lesson by Magellan, who rushed over. Day after day, they became a well-known pair of rivals in Impel Down. 3 pieces? Who was this big shot now? Gecko Moria and Tarklama first snorted coldly upon hearing this, then walked over while looking curiously at Mizn and Nottheim. One must know that the rules of Impel Down had changed. The first 4 underground hells had been largely emptied, with everyone pulled out to serve as various construction laborers. From now on, only prisoners with a bounty of over 100 million would be eligible to be held here and be handcuffed with sea-stone handcuffs. On top of this, criminals deemed very dangerous and likely to escape would have their shadows cut off by Moria. This way, even if they did manage to get out using various strange abilities, they would most likely be burned to death by sunlight. Then, criminals deemed extremely dangerous, possessing very high value, or those eligible to be confined in infinite hell, would have a slave green ring added. These were jokingly referred to by the jailers as the 1-piece set, 2-piece set, and 3-piece set. Soon, Mizn Kibutsuji and Nottheim were first handcuffed at the wrists and ankles, then their shadows were cut off from their feet by Gecko Moria using large scissors, and finally, Slave King Tarklama placed an emerald-like green ring around their necks. Mizn Kibutsuji, I've seen your files. I know sea-stone handcuffs have no effect on your abilities, and you can freely manipulate your body structure, but don't let me find out you've taken them off without permission. Believe me, you won't want to experience the consequences. Magellan glared down at the 2 other world prisoners before him with fierce gaze. In fact, he knew whether they had shadows or not made no difference, as these demons were inherently vulnerable to sunlight. But this was also part of the procedure. Oh? I'm curious what your ability is? As soon as Mizn Kibutsuji saw that Crocodile was completely out of sight, his courage began to recover. He didn't believe there were so many people in this world who could completely counter him. But just as he was about to make a move, the circular ring around his neck suddenly burst forth with bright green light, and his body calmed down, no longer under his control. Of course, you also can't take them off without permission. Magellan snorted coldly and walked towards the large elevator in the distance without another word. At this moment, only Tarklama's cold laugh was heard. I order you, follow Vice Warden Magellan obediently and listen to his instructions. The next moment, Mizn Kibutsuji, with a face full of shock, walked along with Nottheim. His body had completely become a puppet under their control. At the same time, he felt despair for his future. Immediately after, the 2 were led to a hall filled with high-temperature steam. They saw a group of trembling men and women of various strange appearances, lined up in a long queue under the supervision of prison guards holding whips on both sides, leading to the depths from which wails and screams constantly echoed. You 2 go and join the queue to receive the baptism. I will wait for you ahead. After saying this, Magellan ignored them. Mizn and Nottheim's bodies obediently joined the end of the queue and, as time passed, slowly arrived at a stone platform similar to a diving board. Oh, so the so-called baptism is jumping into hot water for a bath? Mizn walked to the edge of the stone platform and looked down at the large iron pot filled with boiling hot water below. The next second, without waiting for the tall jailer beside him to urge him, he jumped down without hesitation. With a splash, a large amount of scalding wave and white steam splashed up. Next, Nottheim also jumped down very decisively. However, unlike Mizn's, she couldn't help but groan in pain. Her pale skin also turned red at a visible speed, and signs of scalding began to appear. But as a demon, her super self-healing ability kept her skin in a state of being scalded, recovering, and being scalded again repeatedly. Presumably, this feeling was quite refreshing. The baptism lasted only 10 minutes. After coming out of the boiling hot water pool, Mizn and Notime changed into clean zebra-striped prison uniforms and took the large elevator with Magellan. They finally stopped at level 5.5. When the elevator's gate opened, a silver-white space filled with eerie purple light and more than a dozen people wearing white coats came into the three people's view. Ha ha ha, they're finally here. Dr. Fritz looked at Mizn Kibutsuji and Notime with a joyful smile, laughing. Welcome to the Biochemical Research Institute, the demon progenitor from the other world. This will be your permanent residence from now on. Sure, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I heard you've lived for over 1,000 years. Hurry up and let me research your body. Mizn looked speechlessly at this guy with goat horns on his head, who was nearly a meter taller than Crocodile. He was now certain this was a world full of giants. Isn't there an even bigger, taller one behind him, estimated to be over 6 meters tall? Meanwhile, Queen, who had just arrived here not long ago, was also looking at Mizn Kibutsuji and Notime with curiosity. Compared to lifespan, he was more interested in the super self-healing ability of these demons. Besides them, there was also Dr. Shawai from the Kabinarai world among the crowd. His latest research result was the discovery that even if a Kabinarai body was incomplete, such as missing an arm or a leg, as long as the heart was not destroyed and there was enough human blood to consume, it would automatically recover within 1 or 2 months. Originally, this should have been a discovery of great value, but the appearance of these demons from the Demon Slayer world made the Kabinarai world's self-healing ability seem somewhat redundant. So he wanted to see if the demon's bloodline genes could potentially speed up the Kabinarai's self-healing ability rate. In short, Mizn Kibutsuji was currently being stared at by over a dozen pairs of burning gazes. From now on, he would be the biggest star in the Biochemical Research Institute. Chapter 333, Announcing Stargates and Other Worlds to the Whole World? Noah's Arkansas Im sat with closed eyes upon the golden-red empty throne, the purple golden resting horizontally on his lap, half-drawn. Purple chi swirled around him, faintly emitting an extremely oppressive haki. The atmosphere within the entire main hall was affected by him alone, making it exceptionally heavy and solemn. The Guja guards at their posts nearby didn't even dare to breathe heavily in this environment. To them, Saint Nerona's recent pace of life seemed to have changed. Previously, this lord often played tennis outside, watched Tesoro's song and dance, or enjoyed the coolness in the swimming pool. But these days, he had acted contrary to habit, instead frequently coming here to rest with closed eyes. That wasn't the issue. The problem was that he would occasionally leak haki, giving people a spiritual sense of oppression and a physiological sense of suffocation. It was very uncomfortable, but they could only endure it. Im opened his eyes. Without any visible movement of his hand, the blade of Inma automatically returned to its sheath, and the purple chi permeating his body quickly receded. However, the sharp glint in his eyes was like the stars, which were then contained moments later. He could feel that his haki, driven by his enhanced soul and spirit, had undergone a small but noticeable increase. It was difficult to explain the improvements in armament haki and conqueror's haki. So, using observation haki as an example, before entering hell to cultivate, his maximum perception range, centered on RLOOOO Holy Land Mary Ejos, could cover 68 zones. Each zone had a diameter of about 50 kilometers. Now, the range had increased by about half a zone. It was this kind of visible improvement that sparked Im's strong interest in cultivation. The feeling of getting stronger every moment was truly addictive. Especially the strange and varied yokai in hell, they constantly brought him a sense of novelty. The pleasure they brought him surpassed tennis and song and dance. Also, at this moment, Im still maintained his sitting posture, but his body slowly floated up, straightening as he did so. The surrounding Kuja guards watched him standing in the air with surprise. These female warriors had long witnessed his ability to fly, so they were merely surprised by why he would suddenly fly. But Im himself knew that the previous flying and the current flying were two completely different things. The principle before was to generate an invisible mass under his feet through the emission of armament haki, so it was more like walking in the air than flying. And now, it was true flight, a new superpower awakened after his sixth sense was enhanced. This kind of awakening seemed to be random. Otherwise, Im would actually have preferred the ability of teleportation. Lord. Stussy walked into the main hall holding a stack of folded documents, her beautiful eyes looking with confusion at Im floating in the air. The latter didn't explain, silently sitting back on the empty throne. Bring them over. Yes. Stussy stepped forward and stood quietly below the platform. With a thought from Im, the topmost document automatically floated over and slowly unfolded before him. Mizn Kibutsuji and Notime have been imprisoned in Impel Down? I suppose in the future, more and more other worlders will be imprisoned there. He had originally wanted to meet this demon progenitor, but after thinking about it, there wasn't much to talk about. He had also considered keeping Notime by his side. After all, Her teleportation ability could indeed bring him some convenience and incidentally add some mystery to the interior of this Noah's Arkansas, but upon thinking of her face with only one eye, his heart was filled with disgust and discomfort. Only then did he realize she was a female demon. Following a female demon around, no matter how you looked at it, felt a bit awkward. So, it was better to send her to the Biochemical Research Institute to see if those scientists with black in their names could find a way to strip or replicate her blood demon art. Right. At this moment, Im's mind instantly recalled that in the Demon Slayer world, there was a female demon named Damayo who could develop various magical potions using herbal medicine and Mezen's blood. For example, medicine that could turn demons back into humans, medicine that could suppress blood demon art, and even medicine that could cause creatures to age rapidly. This was definitely top-tier talent in the Demon Slayer world. He had actually overlooked her existence before, only providing the world government with intelligence on Mezen Kibutsuji and the 12 Kizuki. But it should still be possible now. The other party lived in Asakusa City. Although her residence was hidden within an illusion, dispatching personnel skilled in observation hockey should make her easy to find. Thinking of this, Im immediately controlled the pen and wrote a note below this document. As he continued to read the content of this document related to the Demon Slayer world, he also learned that the Demon Slayer Corps had agreed to join the world government and were willing to settle and live on the Sea Star mainland. Let me think, the value of the Demon Slayer Corps lies in their breathing styles, niche iron blades, and various special constitutions, including Kageya Yubu Yashiki and Jingwemon. Regarding niche iron blades, we must figure out the raw material origin of scarlet crimson sand iron and scarlet crimson ore. The manga said it was a sun mountain that was exposed to sunlight 24 hours a day, but setting aside Japan, does such a place truly exist on Earth? Im had felt this setting was unreliable back then. After all, the world background was on a relatively normal Earth. We can ask the swordsmiths of the Demon Slayer Corps about this later. Also, that blue spider lily, if it truly exists, should also be a heavenly material, earthly treasure. Thus, he again controlled the pen to add a note to the document. He had always felt that his main role for the world government was threefold. First, to be the most solid backing with the strongest combat power. Second, to discover all the value of every other world using the foresight of a transmigrator. Third, the control of the stargates. As long as he did these things well, he would be worthy of the authority and status he enjoyed. And Tanjiro and Nezuko Kamado, this protagonist sibling pair. Tanjiro himself possesses a supernatural sense of smell that can be called a superpower. Not only can he predict his opponent's movements through scent, but he can also distinguish the emotions of people or demons, and even smell the location of the opponent's weakness, which he calls the thread of vulnerability. As long as he subtly follows this line, which only he can see, and hits the target, he will likely achieve a one-hit kill effect. This is utterly outrageous. The first ability, predicting movements, is equivalent to the basic effect of observation hockey. The second ability, distinguishing emotions, is equivalent to Fujiwara's advanced observation hockey. The most exaggerated is the third ability. Isn't this a low-tier version of the mystic eyes of death perception? Previously, Tanjiro was limited by his own strength and couldn't utilize this thread of vulnerability to its maximum. But if he is trained by the world government and gains the strength to wield this ability, he could absolutely achieve the effect of killing one with one slash. Furthermore, Tanjiro has mastered the sun breathing, also known as Ingakami Kagura. This swordsmanship, which can unleash sunlight or is stronger than a niche iron blade, is simply a great weapon against all dark creatures. Besides that, Tanjiro himself comes with markings. When activated, they can greatly enhance physical ability. The key is that they can also resonate and allow people around him to gain markings. Although this is not a good thing for people in the Demon Slayer world, without sufficient physical fitness to support it, it will only become a curse that drains life force. However, some Sea Star people who have undergone professional training can try it. There is also Transparent World, which can be seen as advanced observation hockey with the penetrating side effect of white eyes. In any case, in terms of value alone, it is much greater than the male protagonist Ikuma from the Kabanrai world. As for his sister Nezuko Kamado, her greatest value is that after turning into a demon, she is not afraid of sunlight, nor is she controlled by Mezen Kibutsuji. Furthermore, her blood might make Mezen Kibutsuji or other demons also unafraid of sunlight. Given Mezen Kibutsuji's ability to regenerate infinitely without consuming stamina, if he no longer had sunlight as a major natural enemy, that would be truly terrifying. However, Crocodile has already proven that as long as there is a way to target Mezen's entire body's cells, even if it's not sunlight, he can still be harmed. The people from the Demon Slayer Corps should be arranged to live in Wano country. I think the environment and style there are also suitable for them. The Yubu Yashiki and Jing clans will be placed in the Flower Capital. Those swordsmen will be assigned to the Sword Pavilion. The niche iron blade swordsmiths will be brought to Udon and stay with them two swordsmiths. Sound Hashiro Tenjin Yuzui and his 3 ninja wives can directly join the Sea Ninja Village and help train some ninja beasts. However, his Tenjin gunpowder formula must be submitted to the Academy of Science. Cleared his thoughts in his mind while writing these points one by one on the document. Dragon's side has always been short on manpower. If these Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps are unwilling to join the military for conquest, it's also fine to let them serve as police on the homeland. Anyway, the military doesn't lack these few people. Finally, a question was placed before him, causing him to hesitate. We are about to launch a large-scale conquest of the Demon Slayer world. Should we publicize the matters of the Stargates and other worlds to the whole world? Logically speaking, a major event like a full-scale war with other worlds, which involves all living beings on the sea star, should be known and participated in by everyone in the whole world. Only in this way can all combat power, military power, manpower, and resources be gathered. After all, the world government can only be said to represent the sea star, but it cannot be considered the sea star itself. There is still a certain difference between the two. But the problem is that once this matter is made public, those affiliated countries will inevitably become restless, each with their own ideas and demands, and there may even be opponents. That would only make the situation chaotic. But this matter cannot be kept secret forever. Sooner or later, everyone will know, and everyone must know. Rested his right arm on the armrest of the throne, his chin pressed against the back of his hand, deep in thought. He suddenly realized that he had fallen into a thinking trap before. That is, he had always believed that the important factors for the world government to stabilize the homeland were Wano country and Delboff, these two typical non-affiliated nations. But now it seems the key lies in those obedient countries that have already joined the affiliation, because their number is too large. And the world government's control over these affiliated countries is not that strong. The reason, of course, is the transportation problem between islands. In this world that primarily relies on sailing ships for voyage, each voyage takes at least 10 days, and sometimes several months. No matter what happens, it is difficult for them to respond in a timely manner. But now that we have Golden Lion, before the sea train appears, we can rely on flying warships. Pondered for a moment. Better to feel the pain sooner than later. Before encountering a truly strong world opponent, we should indeed complete internal unification first. Only in this way can the force of the sea star be used as one, condensing into a solid fist. In his opinion, the current world government and affiliated countries are like loose sand. The efficiency of their operation is like flowing sand. Although they appear quite gathered, they are more than enough to face opponents weaker than themselves. But if they encounter an opponent stronger than themselves one day, they are likely to collapse at the first touch. Finally, took out the golden Den Mushi. Lord Imu, please give your order. Accelerate the construction speed of flying warships. Once we have 500, we will announce the Stargates and other worlds to the world. Saint Topman Warkery, who was currently in Mary Joyce, was stunned for a moment, but immediately understood the deeper meaning of Lord Imu's order, and a look of excitement appeared in his eyes. Yes. We shall obey your imperial will. Slap, as the handset of the transponder snail was heavily put down, the room of authority fell into silence for a considerable time. Each of the 5 elders present was contemplating M's order. Lord is going to. Has it finally come to this step? I never expected that the long-cherished wish of our ancestors from 900 years ago would be completed in our generation. St. Marcus Mars, who was in charge of history-related matters, touched his beard with emotion, tears welling up in his eyes. How long will 500 flying warships take? St. Ethanburn Venus Jiro asked in a deep voice. If it's just adding the ability to float to warships, with Golden Lion's ability, it won't take long. The time will mainly be spent on gathering 500 warships and installing the control and power equipment. St. Marcus Mars, who was also in charge of the Academy of Science, provided the answer. The problem is that we cannot use the Marines' warships anymore. After all, once these warships can fly, according to our previous decision, they are to be assigned to the Air Force. So, we need to build 500 new warships? St. Jaga Ursha Saturn frowned. That would take too long. But St. Marcus Mars said with a bitter smile. That's not the only problem. Have you forgotten the ironclad ships discovered in the Demon Slayer world? A few days ago, Sengoku suggested observing the performance of these ironclad ships in future combat. If they are indeed good, then we should consider upgrading the Marines' warships. Following this line of thought, before determining the effectiveness of ironclad ships, we cannot continue building the previous type of warships. In the past, the reason the Marines used warships wrapped in iron plating over wood was mainly because ironclad ships required too many metal resources, which were quite scarce on the Sea Star. But now it's different. With the natural resources from the Kabanarai world and the Demon Slayer world, the Sea Star world can be said to have reached the conditions for a certain degree of resource freedom. Indeed, if ironclad ships are truly stronger than wooden ships, then of course we should have the best. It seems we can only wait. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn could only accept this helpless reality. After all, as the supreme leader of the three forces, both the Marines and the Air Force were forces under his command. They realized with exasperation the two major problems that constrained the world government's efficiency. One was the size of the stargates, and the other was time itself. And neither of these seemed to have a way to change. Chapter 334, Dragon, Pursue the Revolutionary Army with Full Force. Matters of the other world were in full swing under the vigorous promotion of the world government, while various situations and incidents were constantly occurring on the Sea Star mainland. Bang! A gunshot pierced the night sky, followed by more gunshots echoing across the entire fortress one after another, mixed with the roar of explosions and human screams. Angry battle cries and shouts and various noises were incessant. This was the Scarab Kingdom, located in the middle section of the third route in the first half of the Grand Line. It was a place without a reverie seat, but still more prosperous than many countries. At this moment, it was clearly plunged into a riot. Citizens from the lower strata of the populace and soldiers of the Royal Guard were engaged in fierce crossfire along the High Kingdom city wall. Boom! 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 Flashes of gunfire repeatedly illuminated the surroundings before extinguishing again.